Chapter 17. Destiny's Crossroads. The room's energy shifted as I sensed the unseen draw near. Pressure popped my ears, my heartbeat reaching into my throat, the shadows pooling along the walls, the room darkened by a dimming hearth. Raw horror cut through me as Madame remained suspended in an incubative state. Time dragged before her body seized preternaturally, her chest heaving forward, spine contorted. I leaned back in my chair, utterly overcome, as the crystal orb pulsated. Her stern words growled deep within. The tone wasn't familiar. "We've begun." Her voice took on a muted monotone. Seconds later, Jimmy and I grew startled, both jumping from our seats. A bird had slammed into the nearest window, splintering the glass in a spiderweb pattern, the center smeared with blood. "Please don't be alarmed," she said, her voice having returned to normal. "Birds are often drawn to my readings." Setting down her cigarette, she pushed her chair back from the desk, rising. Once at the window, she crossed her arms, inspecting downward. "A crow, that's a first. In recent years there have been 2 starlings, a number of sparrows, a gorgeous magpie, even a wandering seagull." She paused, gazing out ruminatively. "Corvids are amongst the most intuitive of beings. They remember human faces for years. It's said that ravens hold grudges. God forbid the wrong one singles you out. It may harass you indefinitely." Jimmy leaned over to look. "A big one. Is it dead?" "I'm afraid so." As she returned to her chair, I noticed it wasn't merely her tone. The way she carried herself appeared infused with someone else. Instead of her feminine elegance, every movement struck me to be masculine. Her mind had taken on a distance, yet she was more precise in reaction, and her gestures held greater authority. So unnerving was her stone's ocular tinge, I turned away repeatedly, gawking once again. The surface's imperfections refracted uniquely, prickling my skin, as if an ocean of ethereal eyes were exploring from the netherworld. "Please direct your consciousness to the deck, gentlemen. Our liaison has commenced." Taking an extended drag from her cigarette, Madame blew a cloud of smoke in my direction. "Barrington, please select a card. Don't rush, nor should you be apprehensive. Listen to the eternal providence it whispers within. Engage the Paramatman, your truest primordial self, as divine avatar." "Okay, cheers, madame." I had agreed, but without any idea of what she meant. After prolonged focus, a card seemed to shine at me. I tried listening to the ether, hoping to identify its nature. No enlightenment was afforded, so I pulled it anyway. Twice she puffed her cigarette, directing hefty plumes towards Jimmy. "Now, James, you may choose 2 at your discretion." Uncertain and slightly anxious, he reached for the ones nearest him, pulling 2 in one instance. Hester began blowing billows repeatedly. "Barrington, please connect with the 4th selection in conclusion of this spread." Before doing so, my gaze unintentionally gravitated, falling once again into her stardust oculus. Emerging from its blue iridescence, an iris-sized spot manifested. Hester's familiar was gazing directly at me. If she hadn't proven herself so genial, I would have succumbed to a form of deranged panic, racing out the door. The sight of the orb alone was vexing. "Barrington?" Her voice pulled me out of meandering. "Apologies, Hetty." I reached for the card furthest to my left. Just before touching it, jostled by shivers, my intuition insisted on choosing the opposite, the one on my right. I committed. "Excellent. Now, let's have a look, shall we? Please begin with the first chosen." Fearful it was the 13th card, my body clenched. After peeling a corner, I timidly turned it over. Instead of death, it read the card I should have expected, the Fool. Despite both our downtrodden reactions, Madame interpreted the card as duly fortuitous. "The aether is showing very little subtlety today," Jimmy snorted. "The ether has sorted us out, mate." Self-deprecation aside, for critical purpose we all play the fool. Some revel in it more than others. Allow me to interpret. The fool looks to the celestial, always optimistic with an insatiable yearning. He holds an infallible belief that divinity alone promises salvation. Heedless of consequences, the sun's warmth, ever present, shines upon his back. My dad mentions this routinely. I ignored the folly. The fool comes from darkness into light. Exactly so. Now, James, please turn over the first one you selected. It revealed the Wheel of Fortune. The wheel shows a powerful turning point in life, where potential intertwines with upheaval. During the tribulation, a multitude of opportunities emerge, but they carry an exposure to a commensurate burden. Jimmy looked wide-eyed at me. That sure sounds heavy. I turned to Hetty. What are the opportunities and burdens, the fallout of taking chances? The wheel is constantly spinning, and its fortune refers to an individual's luck. Drawing this arcanum offers a warning to beware the siren. Consider it a forewarning. Pursuing a great achievement carries equitable risk. When I saw the wheel of fortune straight off, I felt keen for a spin, said Jimmy. Not to beg the obvious, but how does the fool play into that? Please turn the next card, James. It explains precisely. I glanced out the window. In dusk's sleight of hand, the sun had been replaced by a moon low on the horizon. In dwindling light, the hearth's embers revealed a room full of shadows. An encroaching claustrophobia grew biting as Hester motioned for Jimmy to continue. My eyes gravitated back to the window as he revealed the final card, the moon. Outside, at its lunar crescent, Jimmy's gaze met mine. Timely do say, madame, should I be barking or howling? His joke never landed. While drawing another cigarette from the pack, Hetty's smile was constrained. The journey depicted symbolizes the precarious path to cross the pillars. Acquiring supreme truth is represented, although it bears a camouflaged appearance. My ears obsessed over every word. You said precarious. Why so? Quantifying the unknown, its uncertainty is invoked by the dog and the wolf. The moon symbolizes the use of dreams as a means of thwarting hidden danger. Reaching into her desk, Hester retrieved a bottle of medicine. She doled out several pills and swallowed them with a swig of Pellegrino. Turn the 7th card, Barrington the World. Upon her presage, I flipped it. Indeed it was. Hester said nothing. Daring not interfere, we twiddled our thumbs while several minutes passed. 5, then 10, extending to 15. Nothing came from Hester but her disturbing, morphing gaze. Chills rattled through me as her mouth hung slack, caught in a frozen mannerism of terror. Forced to wrestle with my own, I turned desperately to Jimmy. He'd shrunken into his chair, wincing at the spectacle. Are you well, madame? Just look at her, my God, maybe she's been possessed. What sordidness have I gotten myself into? The voice answering was not her own masculine, succinct, immeasurably callous. As if consumed by cigarette smoke, each word carried a cloud of frigid breath. The single blue dot on the orb's black surface remained. My fear ratcheted as the voice distorted the timbre was utterly inhuman. The identity addressed us. Seek the hermit, but beware this lantern burns with a bequest which consumes its bearer, the lineage's burden. To absolve the past, one must surrender the future. With art meaning? I glanced nervously at Jimmy. The voice continued, Until the burden is alleviated, it is an Ouroboros, a karmic task fated to be repeated. For several minutes Hester said nothing more. Abject misery writhed within her countenance, her face an evocation of silent pain. Jimmy glanced my way, then back to her. Hetty? Every 5 seconds her crystal oculus pulsed with light, the surrounding walls engulfed by a surreal teal hue. The voice bore a distinctly ancient tongue, if not old Latin, perhaps Oscan or Umbrian. Despite my ravaged nerves and bilious stomach, the orb's bioluminescence was mesmerizing. The impure voice spoke. Know that the world foretells an intersection of immense fortune and equal despair. No card greater represents such precarious stakes. The call has been answered by legions. The legions of spirits have imparted its eternal onus. The voice descended into a rasp bordering on growling. You must tell us, are you willing? I felt myself succumbing to the trauma. Madame? Tell us, will you be willing? Hester's form quaked before convulsing again into seizure. It sounded like she was choking. I jumped up, circling to reach her, calling to Jimmy to go get help, convinced she was dying. Just as I grew near, the chair shoved itself back from her desk. Her good eye came alive before curling a modest grin. Whatever had occurred appeared to be over. She wiped away the spittle, reaching for a cigarette, recomposing. Dievas, a familiar, answered. She paused, pinching the butt of her fag, drawing on it with pronounced intention. Please excuse such directness. Tact has never been his forte. Something was off. Her mannerism saddled me with a dastardly impression, opaque as it was. Hester rose from her seat, steadying herself with the desk. She glanced across my shoulder as if listening to someone. I'm sorry, gentlemen. Do excuse me while I freshen up. I promise to return in short order. After putting her patch back on, she rushed off. Once the door closed, Jimmy started flipping out. Holy goddamn hell, this has me in a goddamn lather. Did you see what happened? I was too distraught for any banter. My glazed stare begged for calm. Whatever warning the spirit divas had produced, its premise was deeply troubling. How fucking wild. Ignore the bloody crystal. Did you process what we just witnessed? A spirit possessed her and we were speaking directly to it. No Ouija required. I tell you, Hetty sure is a real one. There's something I want to ask her. Or Dievers, I suppose. What's all this business about risking everything? Not sure I fancy anything like that. Ever since that fool card, I've had an awful feeling. The doorknob twisted open. Hester toted a magnum of champagne with a tattered label reading 1945 Cristal. I haven't had a drink since the end of the war. Do excuse the bottle size, it's all I had. Indeed, why not today, gentlemen? Why not? Said Jimmy. I wouldn't mind wetting the beak. Though Hester ginned, her voice wavered. She presented the bottle before us. This was given to me by Clement Attlee for advising the Reconstruction Committee. Her smile strained. A notable vintage. This was its first year of public release. When she unwrapped the foil, the cork popped prematurely, striking the ceiling. Bubbles gushed across the table as Hetty forced a smile. She emptied the water from our glasses into a potted fern, refilling them with Cristal. Perhaps the spirits couldn't be calmed with cigarettes, they demanded pills and a hefty bottle. After drinking from her cup, she exhaled. I won't be charging for this reading. Seeing as how I'm indulging, that wouldn't be professional. It's just, how can I best equate it? A storm of activity surrounds you both. Please, before taking your questions, let's complete the assessment of the final card. The world's significance can't be overemphasized, be aware. Curiously, I've never encountered clients whose futures were so inciting to my familiars. As to fate, its potential, know that you're both aberrations. It's the most fitting description that comes to mind. I shivered, constricting inside my jacket. Right, shouldn't that be a concern? She brushed past the question. Let's focus on the opportunity for now, not the worst of outcomes. The cards portray that the chasm laying before you is incomprehensibly vast. Inherently, that is neither good nor bad, it only signifies the scope of its consequentiality. Tension rose within, my teeth softly chattering. High stakes? What exactly does that involve? You make it sound like the consequences are all or nothing. Without an answer, she refilled her glass with champagne, each second exacerbating the dread. For chosen ones, an incomparable gravity surrounds the outcome. Love and hate, light and dark, salvation and damnation, although they are viewed to be separate, they stem from the same axis, extending to two poles, as within, so without. The more profound the call to divinity, the greater the peril. I was near exasperation. But how? You're implying we're in peril? In a candid reaction, she shifted uncomfortably in her chair. She consumed her half-filled glass, pouring another. While rare, some clients' fortunes exceed my familiar's capacity for comprehension. Likewise, I've advised in cases in which the denouement appeared unconscionable. I must say, never simultaneously. The implication was stifling through her own admission. She'd never confronted such a situation. I'd grown beside myself, churning in trepidation, biting my fractured tongue. Jimmy leaned closer. Might that imply something extremely rare? I lost patience. Why the fascination with some louts like us? She met my gaze. The spirits have introduced a name. An imposing man, named Jackson. Does that mean anything to you? I shook my head otherwise. Sorry, no. The Hermit. It relates to a thread in your lineage, something very powerful but hidden. Not so much the words, her tenor made me squeamish. The lack of clarity, the feeling of being desperate for meaning, only furthered the unmoored bleakness. I tried my damnedest. I'm racking my memory, but I have no clue what you're referring to, madam. Her head slumped, overwrought. I've not engaged clients garnering such obsessive attention. I'm struggling to decipher its cause. My heartbeat started to thud, as if witnessing the resurrection of a dream. The moment extended. I was drawn to the edge of my seat. Beneath the fringes of the patch, the celestial orb's radiance was bleeding. Barrington, what's your familial connection to the Golden Dawn? Jimmy became animated. That's the Order. Aleister Crowley was a notorious member, of course. I am rather privy, with all the generalities at least. They were Victorian-era magicians, remember? Ethel's cousin Edward was involved. I did recall, but that made no sense. I don't know much about my father. He disappeared when I was a lad. My mum's side is very conservative. They keep to themselves. Befuddled, I soon surrendered. Apologies, Hetty, nothing's coming up. She poured her fifth glass, refilling Jimmy's. Mine remained untouched. As James mentioned, it constituted a secret sect here in London decades ago. They were devout spiritualists who banded together to create a renaissance of occultism. He's an ancestor of mine, this Jackson fellow. Her hands came together, fingers intertwining. Don't pressure yourself so. Allow the ether to answer. In time it will. While attempting to reach inward, a framed photograph fell off the fireplace mantel. Do disregard such occurrences. Please abstain from their distractions. Take all the time required. Jimmy stared at me inquisitively. At a loss, I shook my head. I'd never met anyone associated with any order, let alone an occultic one. Mum's extended family were nothing of the ilk, people who refused to curse. Then it finally came peeling into focus like a developing photograph. I remembered the sunlight glinting off a plaque mounted on a wall. Gradually the words grew coherent. A formal declaration was etched. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, Colonel Jackson William Felkin III, Magister Templi. Barry? Jimmy was snapping his fingers to me. Holy shit, a memory just re-emerged. Sorry for cursing, madam. I recollect my mum's elder cousin, a colonel by the name of Jackson. What's more, I recall his affiliation with the Golden Dawn. An abrupt gust blew out the candles, pushing all the tarot cards off the table. In validation, Hester's eye narrowed in. Bingo. The Fool represents both of your naivete, but also your potentials. The Wheel of Fortune marks the turning point, and the moon warns of the illusions you must surpass. The world, yes, the world stands before you, one intertwined with this man's metaphysical legacy. You may rest assured, Jackson is the hermit. Fucking hell, Colby. There's magician blood running in your veins. Oops, there I go again, eh? Apologies for my French, Hetty. The excitement sure gets me. No more hermit hunting in the tube, isn't that right, mate? I sighed, gobsmacked. Jesus. The hearth's flames roared back to life. She lifted an eye. Christ, yes, the ultimate hierophant of all. Jimmy raised his glass. I propose a toast. To our gifted madam and our hermit, this fellow Jackson. What a wonder this revelation has been. And it would be a sin not to include Miss Chandelle. After the three of us toasted, Hester topped off our glasses, showing herself to be inebriated. The glow behind her patch faded in a blue evanescence. While I was pleased with our headway, Hester's change in behavior remained bothersome. Drowning in crystal, she seemed desperate to subdue the voices. She was holding something back, I was sure of it. Seeing her finishing hers quickly, Jimmy followed suit. This grape juice is quite delicious, best I've ever had. Why not celebrate a bit, Barry? Say, Hetty, here's our next question. Where might this Jackson fellow be found? Though she posed herself reassuringly, the subtleties in her good eye indicated grave concern. Being a petite woman, she was absolutely schnockered after 6 glasses, slurring words. The name Jackson, that's all I've been provided. It seems you've been given a mystery to unfold. Suppose I'll have to ask my mum. Hester, if I may, should we be at all worried? Forgive me if this is uncouth to say. When you left for the champagne, I noticed considerable concern. Her cigarette in her hand had an inch-long ash. Flicking it off, she struggled to relight it. My occupation involves parlaying productive information while filtering out unfounded negativity. Does that make sense? Some imagery I'm shown is purely meant to intimidate. Hester paused to finish her glass, explaining, That's the game the ether plays. I refuse to inject fear into my clients' lives. Jimmy picked up on the ambiguity. Forgive us, Hetty, would you mind clarifying? Indeed, the process. Reaching for her glass, it somehow knocked itself over, champagne covering the table. Muttering to herself, she pulled a drawer, found a rag and sopped it up. How remarkable! That spilled before you touched it. Hester came off aloof, as if abating all the intrusive thoughts. While peering across at us, the seeping indigo surrounding her patch returned. She sat motionless as I clenched and squirmed. Hello, madame. Once the blue glow abated, her voice spoke sombre. Free of darkness, light bears no purpose. My gaze returned to the blood-splattered window as Hester continued. Therein lies a medium's predicament. The more profound the outcome, the more perilous the path. Yet evading the conundrum offers no shelter. A preserved existence doesn't circumvent fate, not one bit, I'm afraid. It causes the soul to loop perpetually. I was in angst. What you saw was extreme then. Not to pry into your affairs, but this is your first drink in 20 years. Are you that affected by it? Jimmy extended his glass. Hetty, mind pouring me another? That's damn fine champagne, by the way. Barrington is correct. The extremities revealed are the best and worst outcomes imaginable. It comes as a feeling like an aura. That's as much as I've been given. It's all too hazy then. Before I attempt to seek out this distant relative, any overarching advice? She poured another glass, speaking in a thick Romany accent. The fool's journey is one of sacrifice, Barrington, and the moon will demand resolve. Another picture fell from the mantel, its glass shattering. She ignored it. Forgive me. I know you're not students of literature, but have either of you ever explored Milton's Paradise Lost? Shaking our heads confused, neither of us had. It's not something I usually discuss with clients, but what I did to my eye relates in some regard. As she continued, I began squeezing the armrest, all my hairs reaching upward along with gooseflesh. Ours is an imperfect human perception, yet in life we're forced upon a path of enticement, sin, and illusion. It's a dreamlike existence, constricted within the tangible like a figurative playhouse. I wasn't sure what to make of it. Do forgive me, I'm rambling. I'm referring to life's fleeting nature of ephemeral beauty, the impermanence of our desires. Sorry, Hetty, I said. Most old books perplex me as much as religion. This is about Milton. In secondary school, madame, we read a segment, but most of us faked it. Can you accept the premise that misfortune bears purpose? She gazed out the window, picked up the broken photographs, and returned her full attention to us. That's what defines the lantern, the divine light wrought within us. As for our fallen world, the outcome exists only within the meaning through which we dare assign it. Her evasiveness had me edgy. It seems you're preparing us for something. Not to be too pushy, madam, but if you just wouldn't mind. I will, Barrington, and I'm sorry that I have to. Beware of what's coming. You can't simply change your address and escape it. I had many premonitions before stabbing my eye. What good were they? While it might be less dramatic, your situation or that of any others is the same. Each of us have shadows to overcome, be it in this life or the next. The vague illusion wrought my angst. Please, Hetty, what's coming specifically? Give her time, Barry. She'll get to that. I apologize. I'm a bit frightened now, I suppose. She gripped the bottle. More champagne? Trying to subdue myself, I thanked her. After filling Jimmy's and her own, she poured what remained into mine. I'll be succinct, though I can't answer that with any precision. While your grand destiny does involve reaching the hermit, the path is perilous due to a dark presence whose nature I have failed to discern. This is painfully obscure, yes, I know. I'm afraid I lack the capacity. I looked at Jimmy, increasingly antsy. Should he and I avoid these types of affairs altogether? Hester finished her glass, her gaze holding stayed. Know this, gentlemen, karma spares none of us. What becomes of our souls is a result of transmutation. In Milton's divine opus, the will-o'-the-wisp is often interpreted to be Satan. I've come to understand it as God's instrument. The mysteries which engage us are no foolish fire. That sounds like a hell of a paradox. You sure have me nervous today, Hetty, bringing up this Jackson man. What should I make of it? She fell into the wing-back, exhausted. Karmic obstacles must be challenged, irrespective of outcome. Nothing's guaranteed nor promised. As for my own affliction, that curse was always in the cards. It was a test. My depth of vision has been greatly heightened in turn. Ironic, laughably so. So goes the primrose path to redemption. Jimmy said, if you could go back and stop yourself from doing it, you're saying that you wouldn't. She didn't hesitate. No, never. My penance was integral to my soul's evolution. I wish there were easy answers. The paradox of defying fate is that one simply prolongs the outcome. When reaching for transcendence, avoiding tribulations is purgative. Your dabbling with the occult as artists isn't the source of the impending karma. Whatever it is, know that it's sure to affect you both. She says to face it. And she seems focused on me more than him while reiterating it. With the reading concluded and Hester intoxicated, we were escorted back down the hallway to the front door. The time will come when a modern Donatello emerges, resurrecting our imagination, humanity's greatest asset. That does sound a lot like Barry. Your mention of Jackson, I can't get over it. How curious. She stepped outside her door, looking up at the encroaching cloud cover. The air was sticky, suggestive of a storm. Jimmy took out his wallet. Refusing payment, she waved him off. He embraced her. We'll find this hermit, Jackson. We appreciate everything, Hetty, especially what you told us about all the masters and their muses. Makes perfect sense. Sending us off, Hester stood before the doorway, drained. When approaching destiny's crossroads, no compass will guide you but your intuition. I will say this: following your heart is inherently uncertain, but it's no fool's errand. As we walked back to Brixton Station, a flash of lightning tore through the darkness. Seconds later, bracing for it, the ground quaked from the hammer of the gods. Once down in the tube, that claustrophobic feeling from the parlour lingered. I rode back dwelling, overcome by Hester's reaction. After we arrived at Sutton railway station, I parted ways with Jimmy, walking home through the park. When I passed a flock of crows, the birds all turned my way at once. On cue, dumping in torrents, came the rain. Chapter 18. The Serpentine. Hester's reading only validated Jimmy's esoteric fascination. All but certain the hermit was Jackson, he'd been relentless in pressuring me to arrange contact. I tried to be a good sport, despite wrestling with an underlying uncertainty too opaque to discern. As if offering warning, a ghastly nightmare befell me. Like Hester forking her eye, I stood by helplessly while committing a deliberate act of self-masochism. Suspended in terror, I sliced off all my fingers with a pair of shears. I was devastated by the realization as I lopped each one off I'd never paint again. The vision was so macabre, so visceral, I've never spoken of it. Days later at work, he wouldn't stop obsessing. We all have a quirky uncle or whatever. Yours just happens to conjure spirits. I can't make sense of it. I was a sprog the last time I saw him. He was a tall, highly respected soldier, Jackson, that's all I remember. A boisterous laugh and not shy with a bottle. Why not ring your mum right and arrange a reunion? I can't stop thinking about what happened with Madame Hester. That creepy eye and deep voice. You heard her, your uncle must be our hermit. She didn't mince words. While the situation was intriguing, his non-stop urgency was just as irritating. You're telling me to ring her? We share the same flat, you dullard. I see her every morning at breakfast. I had been hesitant, inquiring with Mum felt awkward. How does one broach the family occultist after his name emerged during a tarot reading? Perfect. Then tomorrow, never mind those poached eggs. The following morning, Mum prepared my favourite dish as a lad, apple pancakes. After devouring them, with Jimmy's words in my head, I found the gumption to ask. Considering the response, her ears must have been burning. I took her allusion to be a telling synchronicity. How odd. Last night, the seventh seal was on the television. For some reason, I couldn't stop thinking of Jackson. It's been ages since we've spoken. Why did you lose touch? He didn't care for your father. I'm sure he recognized something I failed to. I've heard through the grapevine from cousins that he's become a bit of a hermit over the years. After all she'd said, the hermit's mention didn't strike me as necessarily fortuitous. As for his discord with my father, that was no deterrent. Nobody resented that degenerate more than I. That served to further my curiosity. He'd been looking out for Mum. Wasn't he in the Golden Dawn, Mum? I remember you mentioning something about it. They were an underground sect of occultists, as I understand. Did he ever mention the study of magic? Isn't some of that a bit far-fetched, son? Don't get me wrong. I'm sure they were engaged in spiritualism of some form. I've never taken the notion seriously. But these were no ordinary practitioners. Forget the parlour tricks. It's believed these men beckon spirits to command them. She looked at me slanted. What brought all of this anyway? The last time we saw him, you had just started primary. Odd how memories reappear. A woman brought up the Golden Dawn. I recalled visiting his mansion. You remember the family reunion on White? Summer of '50, wasn't it? You're blessed with such strong recollection. That seems like eons ago to me. For better or worse, Mum, I tend to remember everything. Well, Jackson is an astounding man. He's a war hero of the highest regard, a Royal Marines colonel. I've never known a soldier bestowed more medals. My mum's grandmother was sisters with his nan. He's my second cousin, once removed. How should I refer to him then? Colonel or cousin? He's old enough to be your grandfather, so why not simply Uncle Jackson? I'm sure he wouldn't mind. He doesn't have many relatives, as I recollect. So, Uncle Jackson's no Merlin? I spoke about him with Jimmy. He's always had this interest in occultism and has been bugging me to contact him. Jimmy's always so silly, such an inquisitive lad. She gazed at me with increased curiosity. As for Jackson's tricks, I wouldn't expect much, outside of cribbage and whist. When veterans get together, they hustle each other with cards for quid. I recall Jackson often making light of all the pomp and circumstance. I'm sure it was something akin to a gentleman's club. In any case, how lovely if you two were reunited. Let me know, okay? Cheers, Mum. I'd like to ask him why the occult appears to be a prevalent motif amongst artists. Although the additional information was intriguing, I'd elected not to divulge much to Nomi. In the month since the Cornwall catastrophe and Ethel's grim warning, she'd been noticeably averse to any mention of the matter. It wasn't that I'd set out to mislead her, I just wasn't being forthright. Nothing new to report. Give it a rest, that's what I'd repeat to Jimmy daily. 6 weeks had passed since visiting Hester, and despite 2 letters and multiple attempted calls, Mum had failed to reach Colonel Jackson Felkin. In the meantime, familiarizing ourselves with Hermetic principles, we explored the lore and the teachings of the Order. On an Arcadian afternoon, Jimmy, Chloe, Nomi and I visited Lake Serpentine in Hyde Park during the autumn equinox carnival. As my feet crunched the fallen leaves, a mouldering scent coated my nose. It was an unseasonably warm afternoon as we entered the boathouse. I contemplated the illusion of the sea's serenity within the London bustle. Chloe jumped into a pink one, acting as captain, saluting us all aboard. Untethering the vessel from the moor, Jimmy gave a strong shove, propelling us into the figurative abyss. Acting cavalier, he sneered like a pirate. "Let's see what the Kraken holds. Such a sublime day," exulted Chloe, seated beside Jimmy, her fair hair catching the light off the water's surface. Suggesting an aquatic picnic, he must have envisioned it as a romantic foray, having failed to win her favour since meeting last spring. He packed a baguette, cheese, white wine and grapes all out of character for him. As for Chloe, however charmed by his confidence, he carried a bawdy reputation, whereas she was a devout Catholic. It wasn't all that far off from the way Rick put it to Ilsa. Maybe not tomorrow, but soon and forever. Jimmy pushed back his sunglasses, kicking his feet up on the bow. "A gem of an afternoon, to be sure, ladies. Both of you are looking particularly smashing, by the way. Wouldn't you say so, Colby? Between the Devil and the deep blue sea, we're sailing close to the wind with London's most stunning mermaids." Manning the oars, I leaned to look over the boat's edge. I'd say they're rather brave for it. In waters this murky, one never knows what's lurking beneath. Nomi laughed. "The sea looks a bit slimy green for a swim." Jimmy stood high on the bow. "Ahoy! Go faster, ferryman. Yeah, how nasty. It's a bad idea to dive into this muck. We'll be heading down the River Styx, so better watch out for the Loch Ness Monster." The trees of Hyde Park swayed in the breeze, displaying the orange, red and purple death throes of autumn. Along with Serpentine's musky stench, the air smelt of burning coal, refuse bins and industrial fumes. Nomi uncorked the wine, passing around cups. "Tell me, Jimmy, don't you miss all your friends at Sutton? Not a day goes by without someone mentioning you. I heard a rumour that you dropped out to replace Ringo." I volunteered my hand. "Whoops! I'm the one responsible for that myth. Now you're known as a sissy drummer. A proper line was needed to shut them all up. I think about school routinely. Just the same, we all miss Barry at Pye Studios. The place still carries his hard reputation. Don't play games at Pye, the kinks got lumped up, that's the word around town. Last week, when they came back to cut another single, the Davies brothers behaved like angels." Chloe appeared shocked. "Is this true? Did you really beat the whole band up?" "I knocked a couple kinks out of the kinks," I joked, holding a fist up, insinuating I wasn't any brute. With the sun basking her freckles, Naomi was drawn into nostalgia, reminiscing about childhood memories at Serpentine. "This is a lush day in this dingy, noisy city. Makes me remember being young. My dad really loved bringing me here." Then she caught herself. Jimmy changed the subject. "I still can't stop thinking about our reading with Madam Hester. Still no word from my adopted magician uncle? It's been forever. He's yours now then, is he? If the bloke ever appears, I'll be sure to inform him straight away. I'm sure he'll spill all the magic beans just for you, Paige." I hadn't discussed Jackson with Nomi except for in passing. It wasn't that I was keeping secrets. Rather than bicker to no avail, we'd agreed to leave the topic alone. Hearing Jimmy's mention, she looked at me inquisitively, eyes pinching. "What's London's most exclusive madame like?" Chloe asked. "I've heard the rumours. How true are they?" "Oh my goodness, do tell after Nomi's tarot. What further insight did Hester have?" Jimmy topped off his wine. "Notwithstanding her demons, the madame was a joy. Most of it is true, especially the part about her skull glowing blue. Some aspects are surely nonsense, but I'd say Hetty is very groovy for an older lady, certainly not a witch." After refilling our cups, he presented a toast. "Here's to life's mysteries and living boldly. Sometimes you've got to say damn the bloody torpedoes and go for the gusto, isn't that right, Colby?" "The woman's absolutely a witch," I said, playing it up. Her reading proved every aspect that Nomi had presented prior. I was rowing slowly, disenchanted by all the algae hanging off the oars. The grimy sludge was heavy and stunk of rot, making every stroke a chore. Lovers floated past us as transient seagulls wheeled above the blighted cityscape. Go figure, well before our arrival in Brixton, the hermit sigil had already manifested within her mind. Rather telling, isn't it, Nomi? She inferred the hermit is your uncle? Seeing her grow uneasy, I kept it succinct. When she said I had a relative in the Golden Dawn, Jackson came to mind. "You have a relative from the Order?" She repeated. "Not so much an uncle. I think he's my mum's second cousin once removed. That means twice removed for me, right? How confusing all that gets. The bloke was a Royal Marine hero, apparently. We haven't spoken since I was 7. "Barry promises his mother's trying her best to change that," said Jimmy. "Why keep the family occultist at a distance?" "That's overstated. Mum says he's somewhat of a dignitary nowadays. The Order isn't around anymore. It was more akin to a gentleman's club for him." "Madame Hester earns her reputation, doesn't she?" Chloe said. "It sounds like you didn't leave empty-handed. It really was uncanny." "Having a relative in the occult's most notorious sect," said Jimmy. "Who imagines that in the cards? How telling, considering Nomi's predictions." "Before marrying Rich, I heard Hester was banned from the horse track," said Chloe. Jimmy egged them on. "I'm sure placing wagers with that glowing eye draws loads of attention. When she channels familiars, the entire room turns this creepy shade of neon blue. The light is so bright, the surrounding skin appears translucent. Imagine we were in a dim room and could see clear through to the woman's skull. Quite the frightening effect, Barry, wasn't it?" Serpentine's waters sloshed against the hull in steady rhythm. In the distance, misaligned television antennas defaced the roofs of stately homes, pulling signals from thin air. The world had grown consumed by a circus of gizmos, relinquishing humanity's long-standing means of purposes for entertainment and lifestyle efficiencies. For every new television brought into the world, a painting was taken down. Perhaps I'm just an old soul, marooned in a brave new world. While subtle to notice, Nomi had grown sullen. My heart sank, empathic to her disappointment, trying to shift the tone. "Quite the art expert, Madam Hester. Much of our time together she discussed what influenced the masters. The spirit world, go figure. Since learning of Barry's magic uncle, I've been reading about the Golden Dawn. A fascinating mission, quite the motley crew." Chloe waved the gnats away. "Anyone I might know?" "There's Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, Bram Stoker, as well as William Butler Yeats. Oh, and there's another, a man so sinister that his own mum called him the Great Beast." Before lighting a spliff, I rowed ample distance from the other boats. As the sun slumped toward the horizon, the bugs were getting bad. Our attention was taken by the distant carnival music. Noticing a Ferris wheel poking through the trees, Jimmy proposed returning to the docks to ride it. The girls grew enthusiastic, asking for a sack of candy floss. After switching spots, he manned the oars. Chloe spurred him along with song. "Row, row, row your boat, gently down the stream, merrily, 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 life is but a dream." With a spliff dangling from his lips, he threw his back into it. "Nice pipes, lassie. All right, aye, aye, me mateys. Full steam ahead, eh? We'll push this vessel over the horizon and back again. Let the tides take us where they may." Back at the moors, while exiting, I offered Nomi my hand. "We've never been to the carnival, have we? What sort of girl are you? Do you prefer winning prizes or chasing thrills?" Stepping onto solid ground, she slipped her arm through mine, blithely smiling. "Just know that my eye's already on the prize." "Why not both, eh?" said Jimmy. "Carnivals were meant to be hedonistic originally." "Si, es el mundo al revés," said Chloe. "That means the world turned upside down. These days it's all for nippers, but in the past they were notorious for gambling, drunken debauchery, and plenty of shagging strangers while wearing a mask." I cleared my throat. My word, that escalated fast. Helter-skelters and coconut shies, that's what I had in mind. "Stick with the prizes," Jimmy said to Nomi. "Your beau's well past his prime to be sliding down lighthouses." Upon arriving, children scrambled past us as the smell of caramel popcorn and roasted nuts struck us as we stepped upon sawdust. From a distorted speaker, Entrance of the Gladiators blared. Passing the strongman and the shooting gallery, we bought a couple of bags of candy floss and 4 tickets. Referencing Jimmy's tarot reading, Nomi said, "It seems Mr. Hollywood is determined to test his fortune on the wheel." Taking our place in the queue, my artist's eye was enticed by the wheel's decorative card deck metaphor. Its coaches swung on rusted hinges, creaking ominously each time the ride came to a halt. The old diesel engine sputtered in between throttles, causing the light bulbs to buzz like a bee swarm. Each car bore a motif of king, queen, or squire, the court cards glittering in golden flake. Chloe was first to enter. "I'm afraid of heights, you guys, so forgive my squealing." "That's right, ignore any of those," Jimmy said as the carney bolted the door. Nomi and I entered the next one. A moment later, as the cars were lifted amidst their laughter, Chloe already began to admonish him. "Stop it, Jimmy. Behave yourself. Geez, there's children here." The sun struck our eyes as Nomi squeezed my hand. "We've barely left the ground, and Mr. Hollywood already has her halfway there." "Help!" shouted Chloe. "I'm trapped inside with Jimmy the Ripper." Nomi called out, "Mums, better cover your children's ears." Making an irregular ticking, the chains moved inefficiently through the gearworks. When the slack would snap tightly, it haphazardly wobbled. At 50 feet high, children's ride or otherwise, life seemed fragile. The chance of failure made it treacherous as I clutched the rail, grappling with dark intuition. Here was I, at the apex of my little world, yet I struggled to savor it. I got the girl, my art was proceeding, yet something was awry. When the car jerked, swinging precariously, I shared some gallows humor. "If we plunge to our death, love, just know that you mean the world." "We'd be reacquainted in our next lives," she said, the light kaleidoscoping upon her irises. That sentiment was so blissful I would have gambled all eternity on it. Pausing at the crest, gazing across Hyde Park, I imagined our future as artists, as lovers. We'll raise a loving family and open our own gallery. I would trade almost anything for a family. She rested her head against mine. I failed to discern why, but my intuition was off. After several revolutions, the cars were being unloaded. High in the air, I meditated over what Hester had imparted. As the gears cranked, the chains slack tightened and the cars would swing erratically. Chloe was giggling below us. "Don't! That tickles! Okay, heavens, now let me out. I've survived, my goodness." She wasn't troubled, it all was a game. Once Nomi and I exited, I said, "Chloe, you might consider sticking to prizes with this caddish punter." Jimmy assumed a lascivious tone. "That's of no concern. The ride was a bit bumpy, but she safely got off." Chloe whacked him on the arm. "Ew, how embarrassing. Stop it. Enough with thrills. What's my prize?" Darling, how about the mirror maze?" "Nice try, Rick." Crossing her arms, Nomi tapped a toe at them. "Would anyone care for a proper dinner? Something more nourishing than toffee apples?" Exploring options, we agreed on a Moroccan restaurant in Knightsbridge named Rue du Sahara. After walking several blocks, we arrived. As Jimmy opened the restaurant's door, he hesitated, remarking to me, "This place reminds me of Miss Chandel's story about Africa. She went to the desert to find herself and got a lot more than she bargained for. There's surely a lesson there." Grinning, he patted my back. "Never mind the gin, Barry. It's too late now. They're already on to us." I waved Jimmy by, left holding the door, unmoored by his sentiment. Stepping before the entry, I peeled back the curtain, blindly entering the darkness. Chapter 19. Moral Implications. For a time, I was seeing stars as my pupils dilated. The chiming of bells alerted a hostess who greeted me as I idled blinded. In time, a windowless haunt revealed itself, bearing isolated circular booths in a candlelit room, decorated with French-Arabic maps and Bedouin wares. We'd come upon a grand oasis, a luxurious Saharan refuge bearing opium den ambiance. "My, what engaging decor," said Chloe, raising her nose. "I've never smelt such exotic spices." Led by the hostess and the mystical sound of Chabi music, we arrived at a space separated by Bedouin blankets, offering private dining. Bonne soirée, the host greeted before leading us to a floor-cushioned table. We smiled at each other around a single red candle, our shadows looming above. Having never had the means to travel someplace so exotic, I was captivated. "I do fancy lamb," Jimmy said, reviewing the menu. "Anyone keen for a taste of biblical meat? There's nothing like braised ba-ba-ba after wandering the Sahara for ages." I inhaled deeply. Judging from the enticing smell, I could eat an entire camel. Unfortunately, braised hump doesn't appear to be offered. However twisted his tiresome bleating was, the rich potpourri of cumin, turmeric, ginger, and mint had me salivating. Pushing aside the traditional tea, Jimmy treated us to a hefty gallon of French table wine. As for cuisine, ignoring the kebabs, we opted for lamb couscous, an extravagant communal platter. The waitress hefted the colossal wicker-based demijohn bottle of vino on the table, as if it were a challenge to be completed. "Good gracious, that's as much as 4 bottles, Chloe said. "You are trying to take advantage of me tonight." Ever since the Ferris wheel, they'd been more flirtatious. Tickling her silly, he murmured in her ear, "I've got the new Sam Cooke, Night Beat, on deck, darling." Acting her role, Ilsa pushed Rick away. "But what about us?" I leaned close to Naomi. "Let's keep in mind the film's ending." Her arms hanging around his neck, Jimmy hoisted his glass. "Here's to Summer's End and genuine friends. And I must say, this movie set is all too familiar. Excellent choice, it's just like Casablanca." Raising mine in tow, I started to laugh. I swear that didn't cross my mind. Here's to friends keeping each other's spirits bright. Nice one, a classic. Reaching for the jug, he'd already slugged down his glass. Two-handing the gallon without spilling a drop, he topped ours off. "Let's not hold back, it's the weekend. Come on, bottoms up, ladies, that means you too, Barry." 30 minutes later, covered ceramic platter was brought to our table, patterned in yellow, blue, and amber. The dish was ceremoniously revealed within a cloud of steam, exposing a culinary volcano. Braised lamb was heaped into its cone, lined with courgette, carrot, and potato. A delectable scent melded tones of cinnamon, clove, and saffron. Jimmy rubbed his hands. "Shall we ditch the forks and dig in?" After racing across the Sahara, that's how those camel jockeys devour it. Reacting distastefully, Chloe scrunched her nose. I laughed, picturing. "Are they speedy, these racing camels? The ones at the London Zoo seem very slow." "Where do you park your camel, Barry?" "Yeah, sure, what's the gag?" Chloe giggled. "I know where, in the Camelot." I laughed at how bad the joke was. "She beats you to the punch. Dr. Chloe always outwits Mr. Hollywood." "And I'm all out of camel jokes." Spooning a portion of couscous, Naomi avoided the meat. In the past, when having curry, she and I had already debated the morality of it. While killing any animal troubled her, lamb did so profoundly. "She refuses to eat lamb," I said, only recalling after the fact. "It's not about the flavor, she's enticed by that. It's their innocence that haunts her." Naomi wilted. "Eating it, I feel so guilty. A lamb is too young for the chopping block, not that I'd eat mutton. I heard that pigs are as cognizant as 5-year-old children, so no more bangers or ham either." I put an arm around her, touched. "Give this woman another year and fish will be her sole option. You catch that, Paigey?" "That's another one. Sorry guys, I'll reel in these fishy puns." Chloe laughed, then grew apologetic. "This must be a change for you, Naomi. Lamb chops mint jelly was our favorite. So sorry, I didn't have an inkling. Hold on a second, that means no more bacon?" She finished her glass and said, "That means I'll be bartering my bacon for your pancakes." Waving across, Jimmy gave absolution. "Come on, try some, it's sumptuous. Eating lamb is God's plan. If he didn't want them eaten, they wouldn't have been used for Passover." "This woman stops for ants on the pavement," I said. "What's more, she serves as my moral compass." I held a forkful to my mouth. "Sorry, St. Peter, but a ravenous beast like myself has to draw the line somewhere." After swilling my 4th glass, a giddy euphoria took hold. Naomi was reaching for seconds. "It's all cooked together, so I'm getting the flavor. My God, I sound like a fool. I've convinced myself that it doesn't bear a moral implication." Pouring her 3rd glass, Chloe's diction had grown slurry. "Are you so sure about that? That rationale sounds a lot like my love life." She giggled, throwing a waggish glance at Jimmy. Pushing the pace, when the glass was close to empty, he was there on the spot, topping it off. Soon, everyone was squiffy. With bellies full and the bottle depleted, we sank into the cushions. Drowned in wine, our conversation became erratic and disjointed. While repeating the substance of Hester's reading, Jimmy began heedlessly expounding. I winced as he held up a fork, describing her act of extreme masochism as a fit of spiritual possession. Naomi frowned, tossing aside her napkin. Too drunk to care, I idled indifferently, spurring Jimmy's ire. After all this time, how is it you're not dying to meet the hermit? I mean, call me crazy, he's your bloody uncle of all things. What am I missing? Sheesh. Talk about a colossal sign. Come on, be honest, what the hell, mate? I answered like a broken record. Mum's trying. Last time a bloke answered and said he's on the continent hunting. What more do you expect? Should I swim over to Burgundy and wander the pheasant fields? I'll bet he knew Alistair Crowley. Think about it. I'm sure they were brothers in the Golden Dawn. Imagine all the wild stories. Those blokes wrangled with demons. How balmy is that? Naomi was biting her tongue. Regardless of what she thought of his inclinations, she always assumed I was his conspirator. That premise seemed presumptuous, if not condescending. In a number of instances, I'd reaffirmed my intention to do as I wish. Though it remained contentious, I knew her intentions were loving. I lit a cigarette. I'll just say a gypsy psychic sent us, and that he's our mystical hermit. Can you imagine? He'd probably call me a nance and hang the phone up. Bear in mind he's a Royal Marine Commando, not some bohemian wanker. Ah, bollocks. The man's your bloody kin and he never had children, you said. For all you know, after warming up, he might bequeath you his entire estate. Rather exciting, I'd say. Even if magic's not your fancy, why not try life as a toff? Make no mistake, there was no letting go for Jimmy. Pinched between them, the irony was fitting that Naomi's reading first revealed the hermit. Pouring out the last of the bottle into our glasses, I was aching for a piss. Who's this fellow Alistair? Is he an artist attending Sutton? Since Hester's, Jimmy had invested himself in learning the Order's fractured legacy. To boot, he increased his collection of Crowley's books. We'd be having a pint and he'd bore me with passages. He said to Chloe, he was an artist, yes, but do you know what a magician is? Of course, they perform tricks for entertainment. Looking at me, he chuckled at her innocence. No, dear, that's what's known as a parlour magician. True magic involves the conjuring of spirits while commanding their bidding. Pulling rabbits from hats, vanishing boxes, that's childish nonsense. As for Alistair, the man was no less than a misunderstood genius. Naomi glanced at me, insinuating his bad influence. Soon I'd be standing at the devil's doorstep due to his sinful company. She was overreacting just as he was being theatrical. I yawned, waving a hand. Let him get it out of his system. A gallon of wine was asinine. Preach your dark gospel, Page. To begin, he explained the true meaning of Crowley's mantra. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. The misunderstood credo referred to rejecting societal norms as a means to self-discovery, not wanton indulgence. Through that transmutation process, one aligns with true will. Crowley was labelled the wickedest man in the world. He was treated like those poor witches in Salem, but burning at the stake wasn't his destiny. I whispered for effect. Instead, he and his were cursed. That's accurate, yes. He endured a plague of curses. They didn't just come for him, they affected those closest. I don't get it, said Chloe. What exactly was he known for? Philosophies and writings? Naomi's words were slurry. Try black magic and demons, that's what drives Jimmy's fascination. Chloe appeared confused. An evil Merlin? Yeah, sort of, he said. The point is, his reputation was wrongly warped by fear-mongering zealots. Think about it more often than not. Devil worship accusations are used for propaganda. That's a pile of codswallop. Well, kinda. I was no less intrigued than I remained leery. Aside from my familial Golden Dawn connection, it was the muse that was seductive. Artists as magicians, what began as an outlandish proposition made conventional sense. Don't get me wrong, being Catholic, I know all about hell, Chloe said. What's the truth then? Was his bad reputation based upon anything tangible? Ever heard of Pope Honorius? He was the Vatican's most prolific demon channeler, a bloody pope at that. Assuming he was welcomed in heaven, why not some bloke like Alistair Crowley? Who are we to judge without knowing the man? Naomi poured herself another glass. You're likely to curse yourself being so obsessed. Can't we move on to something else? Why be so bothered? It's this obsession you have. Pardon me for not sharing your interest. As for Crowley, he was a vile, miserable sodomite, I understand. A fat, bald fornicator who refused to shower while sickened from syphilis. Tell us, Page of Wands, is that what you're aiming for? She sniffed the air in Jimmy's direction. Nobody denies he was a bit of a poofter. Magic for artistic purposes is my intrigue. I don't share his sexual fetishes. That was all part of his magic system, if you know so much about him. Listen, what's all the bother? Half of England seems to have a similar fascination. Leave Jimmy alone. There's more to the man than his sexual fetishes. Chloe laughed as Nomi wagged a finger self-righteously. Meddling around with the ether, unless you're protected, it comes back to bite you. Early on, Nan taught me that, but it's common sense. I pulled her glass away suggestively. So sorry for the missus, folks. I'm not sure what possessed her. I pray it's not Alistair. Nomi narrowed her gaze as I poured out what remained of the bottle between us. Have a laugh. Come on, love. Calm down, darling. You won't catch me wearing horns any time soon. Hester put it best. When interacting with the ether, we all begin by playing the fool. She bristled, leering at me. What in the world? You must be psychic. Tell her, Barry, the world was our final card. I'll explain later. Suddenly, I was feeling really bilious. Nomi discerned my pale face. You all right? Do you need to get up? I must have drank too quickly. I'll be okay. For a torturous moment, I was sure I was going to barf. Thankfully, that began to fade. Jimmy began inciting Chloe. Crowley travelled to Giza for his honeymoon in 1904, sleeping in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid. There, he conducted the bornless ritual Perilous Magic. Rose, his newlywed, was unfamiliar with mysticism. Days later at their nearby hotel, an entity possessed her. They're waiting for you, she hissed to Alistair, her eyes white. Instead of being scared, he praised the stars for the miracle. Chloe grew quiet. Possessed on their honeymoon? A rough way to start. Not only had the ritual been effective, he informed us, but in the following weeks the deity was invoked repeatedly, in turn dictating Crowley's magnum opus. For Mr. and Mrs. Crowley, Jimmy said minaciously, life would never be the same. She was possessed for weeks and dictated his seminal work, the Book of the Law. Nomi was irked. How can you find that story anything but disturbing? More so, I find it enthralling, he answered smugly. Don't trouble yourself, dear. I promise that Barry will never take part in my animal sacrifices and bloodletting rituals. She burst out laughing at his fatuousness. I said to Jimmy, Cedric was an angel compared to that spirit possessing Crowley's bride. Sorry, is it Cedric then that attends Sutton? Nomi groaned to Chloe. He's Jimmy's Casper, the friendly ghost. I sipped my wine. I wouldn't call Cedric friendly. Jimmy goaded Nomi. I'm inclined for a round of Ouija after dinner. I waved an arm. Check, please. These poor girls. The day started out sublime and has ended diabolically. With red-stained lips, Nomi giggled. If only Jimmy wasn't so cavalier. The waitress approached. Would you care for coffee or mint tea? Perhaps lemon cake or mamul biscuits? We were all thrashed, if not from the wine, then from Jimmy's incessant rambling. Weary, I replied, no, we're stuffed, I'm afraid. Jimmy swooped up the check. Here, let me get that. Thanks, Paige. I was appreciative. My summer savings were being exhausted. Too full of Alistair Crowley, I excused myself to use the loo. After pissing endlessly as I was washing my hands, my ear was tickled by a whisper. I froze, sure of it. I checked under the stalls for feet nobody was there. After idling by the sink, I reached for a paper towel. I balked a black silhouette was in the mirror, standing behind me. Fueled by adrenaline, I spun around, but it was gone. For the better part of 10 seconds, my body froze as I counted my pulse. It felt as though something odious had revealed itself. Then a heavy thud erupted behind a stall door. Fuck! That wasn't imagined. Maybe something with the pipes. Yeah, sure, bloody right. Tipsy and on edge, for some reason I decided not to push open the stall door. With a frayed mind, I returned to the table, but I knew I wasn't alone. A visible shadow would follow me from that day forward. Chapter 20. Psychomantium. I never cared for early mornings. My best work often occurred in the small hours. Drawing from my subconscious, I'd pace before the canvas, creating outside of time. Then, interrupted by first light's amorous horizon, I'd sigh in frustration, forced into rest, the process repeating. Though, on this night, I lay awake, aware of every second ticking, unable to calm myself to sleep. The clock on the nightstand read 3:13, well into the witching hour. Indeed, these were the wee hours of Halloween. Inspired by the hooting owl, I painted it from imagination, not having seen it. I added a black cat and bats, then spiders and cobwebs next to a candlelit, devious jack-o'-lantern. When it came to adding a ghost, I was thrown for a loop, uncertain how to portray it. I had only seen two, and both were silhouettes. I shuddered at the thought of those spectral hands in the grenadier's cellar. Keeping true, I placed a shadow figure reflecting on a mirror. Flopping around in bed, compelling myself to rest, the task had grown hopeless. In a few hours, Jimmy would arrive and we would be departing for the Isle of Wight. 5 months had passed since Nomi's reading and the hermit prophecy was at hand. I abandoned bed at 6, smoking cigarettes on the front stoop. Brooding over the upcoming day, I'd sunk into a malaise. Across the street, I surveyed into the depths of Nonsuch Park. From within the mist, every so often, an early riser would appear like a zombie from the trees. Sunrise would come at 7, but a splendorous aurora preceded it. It was a stunning display, what began as emerald green, deepened into sapphire blue, before morphing into blushes of violet and pink. Unexpected movement caught my eye as the cigarette dropped from my mouth. From the haze, an alabaster silhouette showed itself. The way the person pranced was distinctive. Its form appeared to hover, the presence fleeting when affected by the nascent light. Holy hell! Oh, that be her? There goes Lady Sybil! Sprinting across London Road, I nearly stumbled over it with some bloke in a long ivory coat walking his Great Pyrenees. I laughed at myself while walking home in my pyjamas. In the kitchen, I steeped a cup of tea and made toast with marmalade. I checked the clock. Jimmy was soon to arrive and we'd begin our journey to the hermit. When Mum got a hold of Jackson, I was there beside her, preening at her flattering words as she winked back. He's become quite the strapping young lad, Jackson, would you believe? Good-natured, hard-working, inquisitive. The two of you will hit it off, I'm sure of it. Sometimes I look at him and think of you, isn't that something? You'd be amazed if he paints your portrait someday. He's really got the knack. Call me a doting mother, but his future's going to be very bright. Finishing my toast at the kitchen table, I washed my plate and made my way upstairs. At the stairwell, I gazed at the sunrise from the bay window. As it caught dawn's lustre, my eyes were drawn to Mum's cloverleaf mirror on the nearby console table. An heirloom from the century before, the bronze finish had been burnished and its reflection was wavy from age. Intrigued by its intricate design, I lingered before it, angling its direction upward. Wait! What the dickens? That goddamn face isn't mine! It was an aging man with long, platinum-streaked hair thinning at the crown. The implication didn't register. Sunken eyes hung below deep forehead creases and a pointed brow. A pair of rounded cheeks centered the jagged nose and manicured silver beard. I see a ghost, I muttered in validation to myself. At first there was no movement, just an image frozen behind the glass. Then my heart skipped as moustache whiskers flickered. The geezer sneered back with his caustic, bloodshot eyes. I was paralyzed in horror as a menacing grin unfurled across his face. For unknown time I remained there incapacitated while the spectre intruded upon my mind. Then came a coruscation of light. I stumbled backward, slamming my weight against the hallway bookshelf. Screaming, scrambling up the steps, I must have awakened Mum. As sunlight poured through the windows, I bent my head around the banister, peering warily at the mirror. Making my way back down the steps, I drew near. Mustering courage, I approached the reflection, forcing myself to face it. Creeping 1 inch at a time, I leaned before it and peeked in the corner. My distorted reflection met me, nothing more. If it were imagined, then why can I envision every detail? A ghost, at breakfast with the sun up. Or maybe I've gone crackers. It's one or the other. Despite the lack of sleep and being fooled by the park's ghostly mirage, I was troubled by the persistent certainty about what I saw. This one wasn't a shadow. Like the proverb says, "Third time's the charm." Mum called out from her bedroom. "Everything okay? Sorry for all the racket, no worries." While heading upstairs, I noticed a book that must have fallen as I struck the bookshelf. Turning around, I retrieved it and placed it in its spot. Bringing to mind Madame Hester, the title was Milton's Paradise Lost. She spoke of the impermanence of desire and the paradox of misfortune's purpose. I obviously knocked it off the shelf, but what are the odds? Around 1 in 100, estimating the volumes present. Perhaps so, but it being mere coincidence had me skeptical. I returned upstairs to my bedroom, closing the door, sheltering myself under the covers. A fucking ghost just appeared in our flat. Paradise Lost falling. What's the message? Lying in bed, I could see every aspect of that ghoul's crooked stare. A couple of hours later, drifting in and out of cognizance, there was a knock at the front door. Jumping up skittishly, looking at the clock, I realized who it was. "Oh, Paige is here." Arriving downstairs, I forced myself to gaze into the cloverleaf mirror. Dishevelled, eyes raw to daylight, I opened the door. "Barrington, top of the morning, fine sir. Well, I see you're still wearing your pyjamas. Why do you look so restless?" "I'm cream-crackered at best. It's been one hell of a morning, you have no idea. Mum's already left for the shop. I won't be long getting ready. Have a chair. I'll go get my things." Jimmy stepped inside, placing his bag alongside the cloverleaf mirror. In painstaking detail, I relived the horror. My eyes were stuck, mate. I couldn't even blink. There I was, exploring the wrinkles within this ghost's pallid face. When he was breathing, his chest would swell. Do spirits even do that? That's a fine question for the hermit. However dramatic my reaction, I truly was daunted. What if this crabby spectre was always around and I just couldn't see him? That's one creepy possibility. You don't get it. I was trapped in a waking nightmare. The ghoul and I were eye to eye for eons. Do you remember that book that Hester was going on about, Paradise Lost? When I lunged from the mirror, it fell off the shelf. If that's not a sign, then what is? His banter was maddening, feigning empathy. Maybe the old fart was randy and stopped by for a morning tug. Are you sure it wasn't Lady Sybil? She might not have shaved. Why do I even bother being forthright with him? You're such a scamp. Believe me, you would have reacted the same. In some ways it was worse than the cellar. The detail of his face was so bloody vivid. What did your mum say? I don't want to scare her. Do you think this is related to Cedric or Ethel's teapot, or what about something with Hester? I've considered reaching out to her. Jimmy scoffed. And say what? You saw a ghost? Big deal. He's probably just an old tenant. Now that you're spiritually aware, you'll be spotting them a lot more. Calm down, man. The occasional apparition is to be expected. He clutched his gut, buckling over. Wait, I just remembered it's Halloween. What a lark. That's like catching Santa in the chimney or spotting a leprechaun on St. Paddy's Day. I'm a bit envious, really. I figured he believed me, but unless personally experienced, a description came off as drab. Ah, fuck off. We've been living here all my life. If that thing wasn't my great-granny's heirloom, it would already be in the bin. Take good care of it. The last thing you want to do is scorn the spirit living inside, not to mention 7 years of curses. I scowled at him, cranky and annoyed. Rubbing the brass frame, he gazed at his reflection. Well, it's one gorgeous antique, especially with my handsome mug on it. What was it you did to provoke it? He put his mouth up to it, steaming the glass with his breath, polishing it with his shirt sleeve. Putting an ear up to it, he rapped upon the surface. Yoo-hoo, hiya, are there any souls hiding in there? Come out and play, you wimpy spirit, I bloody dare you. Piss off with that. I shoved him aside. Stop being such a fucking tosser. Good Christ, just horsing around, mate. This old nasty fart sure put you on edge. Wait, have you actually been listening to me? You weren't this bothered when you saw one in my bathroom last spring. That was just a shadow. Picture this, I saw all the wrinkles, every rotten tooth, even his eyes dilating. His long hair looked like a style from at least a century ago. It was like seeing a living person, but trapped within a mirror, like a window back in time. Don't throw it out. Matter of fact, I'd be happy to take it off your hands. You can store it at my flat, then you won't have to worry about it anymore. I expected you'd say that. Then you'll put it next to Cedric's Ouija, another cursed piece for your collection. I'd rather trash it than take my chances every time I'm over there. Exhaling deeply, I stood up, uneased. Come on, I'm ready to go. Jimmy paused at the door, gazing at his reflection. Ready to meet your hermit? First, let me try this real quick mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest bloke of them all? Suspicion sinking in, I looked at him accusatively. Come clean, have you been messing around with Cedric's Ouija? Maybe he came to the wrong flat. He unfurled a shit-eating grin. Here and there, nothing crazy. Last weekend I gave the board another go with some studio fellows. While calling out Cedric's name, we challenged him to show his face. We drew a magic circle on the floorboards, the full 9. Besides loads of jokes and the occasional fart, such a bore. That had me perturbed. See? Perhaps you've done something to enrage him, so he's wandered over here, knowing you would be coming. Seems pretty foolish, like you're begging for problems. So sorry for that. But here's a question. When's the last time you saw a soldier with long hair? Also, Cedric died in his 20s. How old was this ghoul again? Those were valid points. Not that Jimmy was off the hook entirely. What's more, I couldn't help dwelling on Ethel's warning and Hester's gut-wrenching act of self-masochism. What about the book falling? This was your warning, better listen. I was heedful now, home didn't feel like my own. Fidgeting one last time at my reflection, I left and locked the door. Mum will be here alone all weekend. What if it appears? It would have been better to warn her. Can't tell you how chuffed I am. I barely caught a wink either. I really appreciate Mary putting this together. We started walking to the corner bus stop. You can thank her yourself. Don't forget me either. I had to cancel my plans with Nomi this weekend. Is that frustration I'm hearing? Will our demon conjuring with the hermit risk upsetting the missus? I raised an eyebrow. Huh? Come again? My miffed tone wasn't facetious. This is a watershed moment for us. We're going through the looking glass today, aren't we? That makes you the white rabbit. This has always been in the cards for us. Remember, the hermit represents the teacher of magicians. Crazy how it happened after all this time. We're soon to be his initiates. Following a 2-hour train to Southampton, we headed into the ferry terminal, where the red funnel schedule departed by the hour. Our first priority was a celebratory beer from the concessionaire. Clinking bottles, we gazed at the rugged coast. It was satisfying observing the land pulling away as the ship's thrumming motors barged through the grey of Solent Bay. By the time we finished our second beer, the foghorn blared at East Cowes Harbour. Both of us were anxious, the first off the ramp. After jumping in an old hackney carriage, he inquired about Jackson yet again. Knowing scant, I answered, just like every other time. I've told you the guy's considered an enigma. He stopped attending family events. You know how I despise my father. Apparently Jackson shares the sentiment. Mum thinks that's why he's stopped keeping in touch. The carriage began rolling. Where to, gents? My nostrils flinched. Something smelt disgusting. Chateau Felkin is the name of the residence. It's on the bluff overlooking St. Catherine's Lighthouse. Cheers, sir. Wild, eh? If not for Nomi's tarot and us seeking out Hester's guidance, the two of you might have never reunited. You say the man's a recluse. If so, that sounds just like a righteous hermit. Maybe he's the guardian of all the Order's darkest grimoires. We'll be finding out soon, won't we? Maybe he'll be wearing a bloody wizard robe. Who knows? Jimmy was right. I had no idea what to expect from him, be it as a war hero or as an occultist. I was breathing through my mouth due to the taxi's rancidness. Hey, what's that nasty reek? He pursed his lips, scrunching his nose while gesturing forward at the mangy driver. I winced, rolling the window down. I thought of Jackson's past. It truly was mysterious. Mum wasn't at all familiar. In recent weeks, he'd returned from Château de Hatton-Châtel, a hunting lodge near Metz, France, where he'd leisure in the autumn spit-roasting pheasants and smoking cigars. The Colonel lives like class, eh? I'll bet he'll offer to go shooting. I've never fired a gun, have you? I've never even touched one. Mum kept saying he's something of an icon, highly respected, that was the impression. She told me he never had a family, although I'm not sure why. You know how it goes. Royal Marines are some hard fuckers, not the domestic type. I once watched a grizzly-arsed one beat 5 students bloody. Hey, I suppose it's the damp Highland air, but I'm a tad chilly. Mind rolling up the window? Doing so, I'd neglected the putridness. The foulness soon compounded, causing us to wince. We rolled them back down, leaving me to breathe through my mouth. So listen up, here's some ground rules. No queer questions about unicorns or tarot cards, and God forbid you start going on about Crowley. Play it smooth, okay? The measure of success for this weekend is not humiliating ourselves. Not listening, he pinched his nose. I was taken aback by the driver's foul odour. A portly, heavily jacketed man, he had sweat beaded upon his forehead. Rubbish had piled up in the passenger seat. The ashtray hadn't been emptied in ages. I held a fist to my mouth, forcibly gagging from the mixture of dirty arsehole, cheap scotch and rancid onions. Is it far to go, sir? When the driver looked in the rearview mirror, his vexing eyes dug into mine. You can forget unicorns. White is known as an Isle of Ghosts. We're searching for the hermit, Jimmy said. I'm here visiting my relative. A long-lost uncle, actually. In 6 miles we'll reach your destination. Jimmy elbowed me while taunting the driver. Do you know about St. Catherine's, sir? I hear it's notorious for paranormal sightings. There must be pirates buried there, considering it's the southern tip. No doubt the fishing's superb. Lighthouses had long fascinated Jimmy and were a frequent motif on his canvases. The driver remained silent for a time. Finally speaking, his voice struck me as slithering, a facade of cordialness. The medieval oratory dates to the early 1300s. The Pope ordered its construction as penance for a plundered shipwreck. Now, all these centuries later, the area is known to be terribly haunted. While saying so, he grew animated in an arousing fashion. Considering it's Britain's oldest medieval lighthouse, that's to be expected. Jimmy's ears perked. I find both curious, hauntings and lighthouses. Wives' tales aside, what do you make of it? I knew I was paranoid, but the driver's eyes appeared uniquely sinister. Smirking with secrets, he was a dodgy character, that was my striking impression. Flashing the rotten teeth in his maw, he appeared to relish injecting fear. Think twice about being alone there after nightfall. It's cursed ground, many have gone missing. I challenged his outlandishness. It can't be spirits then, could it, if people are going missing? Forget spectres and curses, what's it really then? Does the Isle have its own modern-day Jack the Ripper? Making light, his gaze grew twisted. Or is it your uncle? I laughed it off. Are you two from the city? He sounded accusatory. Yes, around Surrey, I said. White must have its share of sights. The port was packed with tourists. I'm curious, what makes it obvious we're from London, our clothes or accent? In the mirror, he broke into a jaundiced smile. The decay in his mouth was putrefying. Unkempt eyebrows merged together, hiding his set back and darting eyes. The reason I asked was that people from the city don't believe in black dogs. Natives on the Isle know better. For them, ignoring the unseen is a fool's Eden. These are physical demonic manifestations, not some household spectre. My morning was interrupted by an old ghoul today. Enough with the Hellhounds, we know all about them. Are you familiar with the Blues? The bloke took on an embittered mien. Beneath the talk radio, I cupped my hand for discretion. Keep an eye out, okay? This manky sod's name might be Jack. Sure stinks like a hellhound died in here, doesn't it? Jimmy joked too loudly, the driver likely heard, making it a chore not to laugh. The bloke has the personality of a serial killer. Keeping eyes on the road signs, I made certain we were going in the right direction. While turning off Appleford onto Dolcoppice Lane, we began slowing to a crawl. Meandering down a bumpy forest path, the car stalled while passing through a shadowed grove. We just sat there in a moment of eeriness. I made eye contact with Jimmy. Get ready. Here comes the goddamn leather apron. Pardon, sir, are we still on track? Chateau Felkin is just ahead. Is the engine having trouble? I asked. If not, what's the problem? Oh, right. I only slowed because this is where hellhounds are seen on the prowl. I thought you'd be curious. I shook my head at Jimmy. This bloke sure is shady. He centered himself in the seat and nodded as the car crawled forward. Tell us, sir, what does one do when confronted by a hellhound? Too late for running around or screaming for help, I suppose. Before replying, the driver drank from a hip flask. Once you see the glowing red eyes, unless you race off in an automobile, you'll never outrun one. What's more, when they take to your scent, not even a priest can restrain them. That's why they're referred to as churchyard beasts. The clergy isn't a deterrent. Those demons are so powerful they have no qualms about desecrating sacred grounds. For 40 years there's been a pub legend about a man on the White that fought one off. Absolute rubbish, that's what I say. Jimmy looked over and chuckled. Sorry, sir. I'm a believer in ghosts, demons, and sometimes even nymphs. But where do you draw the line with it? Black dogs in the American South are well documented. Even Japan has them. You'd have to see it to truly believe it, I suppose. Watch your mouth. People have disappeared in this very grove after daring to say the same. Around here it's no laughing matter. Let's just keep moving, please, I said, disquieted. Exiting the trees, passing in and out of fog, St. Catherine rose in the distance, defying the channel's expanse, its white stone columns sharply contrasted against the ocean's midnight blue. Off to the west, hundreds of feet above the coastline, I saw a 2-story small-scale chateau on top of the bluffs. 13 years later, I still recognized it. Entering his property's open gate, my memory reinvigorated, recalling that visit so long ago. Old vines had since devoured the mansion's veneer, and the tiled fountain that centered the circular driveway was defunct, its water appearing perennially drained. Catching sight of the coastline, the vantage was aesthetically evocative, in a stunning display, the bulbous fog layer encroaching on the shore like a field of cotton. The carriage circled around the front, the brakes moaning as it halted. As deep-throated dogs bellowed in the background, I discerned the sound coming from an adjacent barn. Arriving back then, they'd frightened me as a child. Now I remember. Feeling off-kilter, As if a time traveller, a disquietude enveloped me. However unnerving were those guttural snarlings, I'd arrived on White unmoored, realizing myself uncertain of everything. I just remembered the size of his dogs. They were monsters. Jack the Ripper smiled at us in the mirror, grinding down on his blackened choppers. I'd advise taking great care outside after sundown. It's All Hallows. Eve, isn't it? Those dogs will never save you. Better keep a knife at hand. Chapter 21. Jack-o'-lantern. Stepping from the car, I assumed a casual demeanour, yet my anticipation was anything but. With boots on the ground, faced with every potentiality, all obstinate skepticism faded. What if Jimmy's predictions proved correct? Across the way, two men approached. For such a momentous reacquaintanceship, it dawned upon me I'd regarded the precedents with short shrift. A grizzled man in a dark blue worn greatcoat called out, "What cheer, good fellows?" Hoisting an ale stein, he loomed before the doorway. "That's surely him, Jackson. God damn, he's even bigger than I remember." After we paid the fare, the driver popped the boot. A second man, wearing camouflage attire, attentively retrieved all our belongings. He motioned us along to the doorway, treating us as distinguished guests. Being relatively young and from modest beginnings, his deference was wholly unfamiliar. I wasn't sure for what or why we were being received with such revered formality. Jackson paced near. "Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to Chateau Felkin." He inspected me, aligning his spectacles. "Now, which of you is Barrington? I suppose it's the fellow that bears a shade of resemblance." "It's been some years, hasn't it, Colonel Felkin?" A stone-firm handshake preceded our embrace as memories resurfaced. I felt something wet. "Oof, sorry, sir, I've spilled your beer." Beaming back at me, he couldn't care. "My, you're just as I remember. Inches taller and more handsome than your father. Your features resemble Mary's, perhaps slightly my own, if I dare say. Bite my tongue, how horrifically insulting did I just compare your mother to my ragged face? Never repeat that to her, please." I laughed at his dry wit. "Not a worry, sir. There was a compliment in there somewhere." Confronted by the hermit, Jimmy stood by silently, tongue-tied and intimidated. Having never known him to behave so, I tried not to chuckle. At first sight, Jackson was intimidating in every sense. Grabbing his arm, I pulled Jimmy forward. "Uncle, this shy bloke is my best mate, James Page." Jackson reached out for a handshake as Jimmy closed the distance. He addressed him stoically, as if conducting a military inspection. All the while, his grip on Jimmy's hand persisted. "Is he up to snuff, this new recruit? Under heavy fire, will he pass muster or cower in the bunker?" Knowing it was a ruse, I waited for Jimmy to answer. He was unsure how to react, convinced it was a serious question. His voice wavered. "I'll do my very best, sir. Oh, sorry, shall I address you as Colonel? Barry refers to you as Uncle, so I wasn't sure." Jackson didn't respond, remaining at attention, eyeing Jimmy as he floundered. "It's an honor meeting, sir. I've heard some legendary things. What a fabulous estate." Jackson towered over both of us at 6'6", a couple stone more than myself and 5 more than Jimmy. He was born in 1897, yet even at ripened 67 he appeared full of grit and capable of quiet violence. As much as I relished seeing Jimmy so humbled, I made light, teasing his merit to Jackson. "He doesn't blink while earning lots of quid and chasing skirts." Hands locked, stare driving, Jackson pulled him closer. Then, using his left, he gripped Jimmy's shoulder. His tone came off as grave and serious. "A captain goes into a brothel asking the madam how much for the pleasure of my company. She said 100 francs. After the captain handed over the money, he opened the door behind him. 100 soldiers stood in line. He called out to his men, 'She's giving our company a hell of a bargain. It's only 1 franc apiece.' Gasping his laughter, Jimmy exclaimed, 100 for the whole lot. That's a hard bargain, forgive my pun. Either way, that poor lady sure got stiffed." Jimmy had passed muster with flying colours, sharp with his lewd banter, the two sharing a hearty appetite for wit-fueled salaciousness. It was as if a competition between them had unfolded. We were invited inside, entering a foyer where the Union Jack was draped alongside the flag of England. In an arch over both of them, a Royal Marines banner declared per mar per terram. An elegant Edwardian grandfather clock struck 5 just as we passed it. Taken by St. Michael's chime, I noticed the cartouche's dedication. In remembrance of my dearest Ophelia, may eternity mend our broken hearts. Commodore Jackson William Felkin, the 2nd year of our Lord 1905. Keep your jackets on, gentlemen. The other man with our bags had left. After leading us out the rear door onto a veranda, he gestured that we sit, appearing enthused by my reintroduction. His eyes dancing with vigor, he produced several cigars. Would either of you care for one? Or, considering you're artists, I'd wager you'd prefer some reefer. Him being a soldier, I assumed it was a quip. Don't report me to your mother, but there's a boatload of Jamaicans stashed in the humidor. After clipping the tip, Jackson ripped his lighter's flint, blowing a plume. Exacerbated by fog, the dwindling autumn sun's rays were being snuffed by the sea's nimbus. A waxing crescent appeared low in the west. Hung like a seer's pendulum on the horizon, the scene evoked Hester's tarot description. The moon represents dreams and intuition as the means of thwarting hidden danger. It's been a long time, Uncle. I thought you'd struggle to recognize me. Of course I remember you, Barrington. Shame on me, I've watched you grow through your mother's photographs. We've aged now, haven't we? Great Moses. Last time we met, you were a spry nipper who liked my dirty jokes and playing soldier. Please, as for the years passing so carelessly, I'll ask your forgiveness. No trouble, sir. I've never considered it like that. To be frank, early on, your father's presence was a deterrent. Then, by the time he was gone, I wasn't sure your upbringing would benefit from an old soldier's meddling. I'm routinely chastised for being a shoddy influence with Sprogs. Growing up, I learnt to smoke, drink and cuss by the age of 10. In any regard, soldiers don't fraternize well with city businessmen like Percy. Just give me one whiskey. I'm prone to blunder. No apologies needed. As I'm sure you heard, he took off after Mum's baby died and hasn't been heard from. She thinks he moved to the Riviera somewhere. My heart sure aches for her. I pray she meets someone. When I move out, not that I intend to for now, she'll be all alone. It troubled him enough to wince hearing it. He reached over for my shoulder, squeezing. I've let both of you down. I should have been coming by routinely to help keep an eye on things. He looked at Jimmy, forcing a grin. Every boy needs a man to toss the rugby ball around on the pitch, eh? Not to mention teaching the ins and outs of women, if I may. He handed us each a cigar. You certainly may, Colonel. Your nephew needs a bit of that. Jimmy threw a simpered grin. When Barry sticks it in, he tends to leave it there. Amongst the laughs, I clarified any potential guilt. Allow me a moment, Uncle. Don't feel as though anyone was let down by you. We weren't your responsibility. His reaction argued otherwise. After snapping into a grin, he puffed his cigar, affirming, That means we'll be making up for it then, won't we? You better count on it. Now, as for you, James, I have a saucy question. When's the last time you had a good duck? Jimmy smirked. I knocked the stuffing out of one last night. Jackson laughed for nearly 20 seconds. As you were, my good man, this one is the quacking persuasion. Quite the duo, these two. Here comes their contest of depravity. For me, dining on duck involves visiting the corner chicken shop, Jimmy said. Jackson sneered at the mention. Those are dirty birds, freaks of nature. Chickens are tortured in cages, covered in their own feces. I'd rather eat the unwashed quim of a Parisian whore. I almost dropped my cigar, left stammering. Are you catching this, Page? The colourful language, oh wow, I'll have to scrub out my ears. He was in stitches. I've never heard such proper command of King's English. Spend some time with soldiers in the trenches, you'll hear every raunchy euphemism that's ever existed. However, those sentiments regarding chickens and whores were most sincere. The humour continued until some time later, when we put out the cigars. Leading us back indoors into a commodious drawing room, it overflowed with fascinating items, photographs and bookshelves. An immense buffalo skin lay across the floor, its raised head's inky eyes reflecting like mirrors at us. Jackson explained that an ancestor shot it. His maritime forefathers were transatlantic traders prior to the American Revolution, pioneers of unexplored lands. This was their legacy trophy. Shot alongside Samuel de Champlain, passed down through 11 falcon generations since 1624. Jackson extended an arm at the comfortable chairs before the hearth. Come, rest comfortably, be seated where you like. Please, let's push past the pleasantries. What a bore they are. After a lifetime in the military and secret societies, how nauseating that slobbery becomes. His voice projected down the corridor. Stanley, can you hear me, old chap? On cue, he called back. Yes, Colonel? Would you be so kind as to retrieve a few bottles of ale from the mess hall? On the surrounding walls, an uncanny array of artifacts were displayed. Amongst them were Iroquois peace pipes, Egyptian prayer idols, sheathed samurai swords and spirit masks from New Guinea. A bookshelf dedicated to military affairs covered a considerable stretch, ranging from Sun Tzu disseminations to Eisenhower's post-war essays. Taxidermied animals stared down at us in dry-eyed stasis. A majestic bald eagle had a talon reaching for me. Beneath its 7-foot wingspan, a rattlesnake was clenched within the other, poised to strike. "What an outstanding collection," said Jimmy, perusing a shelf of novelties. Dusty glass cases held hundreds of military medals. Rows of plaques with gallantry awards lined the walls behind them. Their inscriptions included the Royal Marines and a number of gentlemen's clubs, whilst others bore the insignia of the Golden Dawn. Walking over, inspecting one, I realized it was precisely the memory that resurfaced in Madame Hester's reading. "You don't mind us snooping, Uncle, do you? Otherwise this would be rude as all hell." "Funny, that's precisely where I remember you standing as a lad all those years ago. You were intrigued by all the medals." On one commendation, the gold-flake inscription decreed, "Master Mason, United Grand Lodge of England, 34th degree, 1923. Another boldly stated, Grade 9 Magus, the Order of the Golden and Rosy Cross, 1931. Although gorgeous awards, their ribbons had frayed and faded, having been long unattended near the window's light. Jackson seemed to despise any shutters or curtains closed. Jimmy and I joined him, lounging in the hearth's extravagant leather furniture. Before the resplendent stone fireplace, oak sofas and chairs with plush cushions sat centered U-shaped. The hearth had a timeless aura, a soul its own. It had artfully been cobbled from local stones extending 15 feet to the ceiling, rising twice as high through the roof. Its granite flue leaned slightly off kilter and was blackened by a century and a half of ash. For 7 generations, Jackson recounted, his eyes drifting back in time, the embers had burned perpetually. Stanley arrived, presenting a basket of Gruyere croissants and chilled bottles of Burt's ale. The roasted duck, he informed us, would be served at 8. Clinking bottles, having established ourselves, the 4 of us toasted to a proper ducking. Stanley returned to the kitchen. As the sun descended, its rays passed through an elegant stained-glass window. Measuring 7 by 7 feet, it depicted a knight carrying a shield which bore a gilded star. He was seated upon a burgundy coat of arms, the family's crest. Below it, the shards of crimson glass read, Chateau Felkin, dedicated 1815, the Battle of Waterloo. Kind of ironic, eh, the family constructing a goddamn chateau? Particularly right after battling those Napoleonic Nancy boys at the behest of a bunch of diabolical bankers. As for the French, when they aren't pissing in each other's mouths, they're wearing dresses and licking jacksies. Jimmy was choking on a laugh. Dare I say, Colonel, that's quite the window into your family's legacy. If not a broken window into my own, I can't account for any illegitimate children that I've sired, but not a single one has tracked me down. The point being, the Felkin line has reached the end. I set my ale down on the cocktail table. The glass centre was constructed as a showcase displaying a cross-forged medal. At first, in disbelief, my eyes defied me. It read Commendation for the Victoria Cross. While I was nothing of a soldier, we all knew what that meant back then. It was Britain's most prestigious honour, venerating the apex of heroism. It rarely was bestowed, but for deathly acts of valour. Less than 900 had been awarded during both World Wars. I grew breathless, processing what that meant, too timid to ask. Jackson saw me flustered. Your mother's family isn't aware of that. For decades I kept it hidden. Mine never made the newspaper. The award featured a bronze cross patty with a crown and lions superimposed over it. The motto stated succinctly, For Valour. A document accompanying was sealed and signed, reading, Presented to Jackson William Felkin III by the Monarch of the United Kingdom, on the advice of the Prime Minister, 1921. My thoughts spoke aloud. Why? It's the Victoria Cross. I don't regard it the way most would assume. In Kiel, during a siege in the First War, I lost every man in my squadron. We all should have perished together, yet somehow I made it back to Copenhagen. That incident ushered my dark night of the soul. Eyes stretched. We listened acutely as he described the grim implication. Yet you continued on, Uncle, fighting again in the Second War all those years later. What could be more admirable? Jackson finished his beer, arching forward in his chair. Some of us are born into it. My father was a battleship captain who embodied the Royal Navy's credo si vis pacem parabellum, if you wish for peace, prepare for war. Although he reached the rank of admiral and was a resolute leader, his lust for war fighting undermined his life at port. Jackson explained his father's tenure at Britannia Royal Naval College. There he gained comprehensive expertise in dreadnought warfare and engine mechanics. Rising through the ranks as a battleship commander, he sank with his ship during the Battle of Jutland as an admiral. His soul was torn from the sail's cloth. For the most hardened dogs of war, a macabre nihilism seeps in which corrodes the moral compass. Cold-blooded, yes, to be sure. You served on your father's ship, Uncle. Humph! He would have never tolerated that. Regardless of my accomplishments, he always treated me as an inconvenience. As furious as that made me, it struck as a heavy blow when he met his end with a crew of 1,000 sailors aboard the battlecruiser HMS Invincible. When a chaplain arrived with a telegram, I realized, then I was the last Felkin standing. Was he adamant that you carry on the bloodline? I asked. It would seem not, considering my enlistment at 17. Instead of a desk job, unlike most sons of ship captains, I was deployed to Turkey's trenches. He described the Gallipoli campaign in the Turkish Straits as some of the First War's most insufferable battles. It was a bloodbath of hand grenades and bayonet blades while choking on mustard gas. Close combat done in nighttime sieges mostly. There were several times I survived by camouflaging myself underneath the dead. While I was hospitalized from shrapnel, notice arrived of my transfer to Naval Intelligence. Then, Uncle, he finally intervened? Only after the Invincible was sunk in 1916, then a naval associate of his threw me a lifeline. Commander Bubbles, as he was known then, brought me into intelligence. His name was William Milbourne James, a fine gentleman and sailor. Ultimately, he was knighted. I grew humoured at the name. Why Bubbles? As a boy, he was depicted in a soap advertisement. The name followed him all the way to Admiral. A funny thing, eh? What becomes of legacy? Activities? I would have never suspected. Jimmy chuckled. Right, Barry, that's the idea. An eruption of guttural barking penetrated the walls. Jackson paused, listening. Must be a fox. In recent years, they've overrun the Isle. Come with me, men, you can meet the mongrels. Exiting out the back, we passed through the veranda into the yard. Above us, Polaris emitted its celestial brilliance with pronounced glisten. Walking together towards the barn, he abruptly halted. Bending over to pick something up, it was an immense striped feather. It's been decades since I've found one this large. I'd say the timing is fitting. Sorry, Uncle, what's its significance? The bird must be rather impressive, judging from the size. It's a hawk, a rare example. This is a goshawk specifically. Their extravagant red eyes aid them in ambushes. At twilight, glowing in the distance, people mistake them for hellhounds. Is that a bad omen? He handed me the feather. Not at all. Finding a hawk feather is agnostic to outcome. Rather, one on your path gives a call to action. The tribes of North America view such signs as messages from the spirit world. Jimmy held it with admiration. So then, what's this one hoping to tell us? The answer may appear in time. I'd reckon it implies something considerable. I handed the feather to Jimmy as Jackson led us inside the workshop. A row of kennels housed wire-haired pointing griffons, specially trained gun dogs used for roost charging. In the rear, another door had larger creatures pressing against it. Though not barking, judging from the immense pressure upon the hinges, they were monstrosities. And that door are the fangs and claws. I'm sure you heard their bellows while arriving. These dogs are fight-driven mercenaries, natural guardians. We've bred this line for over 100 years to fend off intruders. White is prone to deviancy, though rest assured, Stanley sleeps without a worry when I'm off dilly-dallying on the continent. Jimmy was uncharacteristically nervous. Dogs haven't taken well to me in the past, sir. You sure that I won't trigger them? When the gate opens, you must ignore their presence, no eye contact or fearful reaction. This is a psychological exercise as they recognize insecurity and are highly territorial. Just behave indifferently, as if they're not present. Should any aggression ensue, I'll intervene at once. Before lifting the latch, he turned back, assessing our preparedness. Defy your fear, men. Face it straight. Otherwise these beasts are inclined to reciprocate. Both of us nodded, gulping at the metaphor. As the heavy iron clamp came undone, my arse pinched as tight as a nun's fanny. Good Lord Jesus Christ, fucking bloody hell. It was like being in the Roman Colosseum as 5 muscular, waist-high hounds approached. I clenched as one's muzzle burrowed deep in my crotch. As it sniffed with slow, deliberate breaths, I knew my life was on the line. It felt like a litmus test from the bearers of death. With my cobblers dangling before the jaws of fate, I frantically prayed for it to end. These are Presa Canario, known as man-stoppers, a breed established in the Canary Islands centuries ago. They once roamed with the cattle herds, decimating any foolhardy poachers. They possess the bulldog's aggression, but at the scale of the mastiff. "I don't think these two fancy me," whispered Jimmy. He had a beast pressing on both sides of him. Limb-shattering force is generated by a single bite. More than 600 psi, the equivalent of a lion. One wore a deep sandstone coat with a black mask, while others bore striking rouge brindles. The dogs inspected us suspiciously, circling like chummed sharks. Ridge-lined hair lifted upright while assessing our intentions. Their maws were brawny bowling balls capable of wielding instant carnage. "At ease, men. I can be such a sardonic bastard. Forgive me. I do apologize, truly. I'm sorry. As for the dog's danger, I was only toying with you." He began roughhousing with the dogs, encouraging us too. Jimmy whistled, expending angst. "God damn, you sure had me fooled, sir." Nerve-frazzled as I was, whether a hellhound or the devil's most unsavory demon, I wouldn't have doubted Jackson's protection. I petted the fawn dog as it sniffed me, directing its head away from my todger. "I had a feeling that you weren't feeding us to the beasts. With you here beside us, I'll dare say this, I wasn't all that frightened." "Oh, lummy, I sure bloody was," said Jimmy. "The entire time I was grinding my teeth and cupping my nads." Jackson patted him on the back. "The hounds are no less deadly than I previously stated, but they know better than to cross the alpha. Bare-handed, me against them, eh? I'd tear their fucking heads off. The pecking order is well established." "Fair play then, Colonel. I worried by the time you reacted they would have been gargling my chewed-up gonads. Say, mind if I ask, what do you feed them? An entire duck daily, I'm guessing. Don't forget the occasional mainland drifter. I see the dogs have taken to you fine men, so please consider yourselves initiated at Chateau Felkin." His ears pointed as he paused warily. "Sorry, do you hear something?" There was a ruckus outside. Jackson kicked the door open, the process exploding into the twilight. I watched them transform into a pack of bloodthirsty mongrels. While racing out the door, each of them weighing 10 stone, the ground trembled as if they were a cavalry of horses. Trailing them outside, a snarling sound emerged from beyond sight. He scanned the dimming distance. "A late snack. Tomorrow we'll find the bones sundered in heaps of dog excrement. Nature always finds its way." A primal howl erupted far off. Jackson's presence faltered as he spoke unintelligibly. "God damn you if ever again, Cerberus." Despite the cover of a darkened sky, I saw his demeanor alter. The glazed stare fell into an unwelcoming frown. Being near him, I sensed him seething, as if wartime bloodlust re-emerged. A moroseness had taken hold, passing after a moment. I gave him time. "Everything okay, Uncle? I pray our banter isn't growing overbearing." Jimmy was silent alongside me. Neither of us understood what had just occurred. "Never mind my mumbling bullshit," Jackson finally replied, breaking the long pause. "Gentlemen, sometimes my lips have a mind of their own. Remnants from the past tend to get the best of me. Never mind, it passes just the same." Perhaps something related to a dog or the sound triggered wartime flashbacks. But whatever it was, for that moment his dismal mood was startling. Jimmy made light. "As long as I wasn't being a horse's ass, Colonel. Before coming, I promised myself I'd be well-mannered. No need, not at all, James. And please feel at ease to call me Jackson. Let me introduce some perspective. Soldiers have an old agreement when spending time on leave. If one offends another, they're responsible to pay for both men's good-time girls. Cor blimey, who do you suppose paid the tab most of the time?" As we all laughed together, Jackson's stoic camaraderie revealed itself, a hard-fought resolution despite all the trauma and pain. "Return indoors to the fire, yes, gentlemen? I think it's time for a whiskey bottle." After whistling for the dogs, he secured them for the night, leaving 2 free on guard. Jackson led us to the drawing room and stoked the hearth. Gazing into the flames fraught after witnessing such a sudden transformation, I pondered what affected him. Your mum spoke of an interest in esoterica and referenced my tenure in the Golden Dawn. What exactly led to our reunion? I can't say how sorry I am, and certainly no less appreciative. Reaching out has always proven a chore. I picked up on Jimmy's tense body posturing. He wanted me to mention Madame Hester and tarot prophecies. That felt in poor form. I was still shaken by the sight of his Victoria Cross. Who were we after just arriving to ask such things of him? I was a bastard of common stock, some generationally distant, second-removed cousin pestering him at his chateau. Better off tempering those idealizations. We'll be seen as twits, not to mention embarrass Mum. That said, in addressing his query, I approached benignly. While exploring motifs in art school, we stumbled across the notion of ethereal muses. Looking into it, the concept appears quite legitimate, namely the means of channeled insight that's beyond the artist's consciousness. I'm not very familiar with the nature of spirits nor angels, but from what we've found, there seems to be an unseen intelligence which influences them. My words felt amateurish. To him, a serious military man, I surely sounded like an imbecile. I saw Jimmy throttling his tongue, chomping the bit for any opening. Jackson looked at us confounded. Not sure that I follow you fellows. Are you asking if occultic rituals are advisable for artists? For what? To make a painting? Jimmy horned in. That's right, precisely, sir. We've come to find that for many masters, doing so was integral. Outside of divine inspiration, drawing from the ether, masterpieces like the Sistine Chapel would have never been. As artists, this has us deeply intrigued. His reply came after deliberation. True, the potential of the ether is limitless, but I must say employing its unseen forces becomes no less hazardous. Room 41, my former command, was instituted specifically for wartime purposes. Those affairs were done in the name of old Blighty's preservation, matters of grave consequence. This was his somber warning, however forthright or subtle. His reaction came off as panged, as if his past reached present, quelling him. Then Jimmy nudged the conversation forward, speaking of Ithel and her unorthodox works, employing the planchette as an intermediary mechanism. He digressed about the order and alluded to her cousin Edward. After listening, Jackson looked on nonplussed. Then he reached for the Bushmills bottle. I find the aether in the material world to be oil and water. And, as to the veil's comprehension, what's the rush? He softly laughed. The outcome of this grand illusion awaits us all. How do you perceive the occult's purpose, Uncle? After all these years, the Order's reputation remains profound. Panning a grin, he rose from his chair, approaching a life-size marble bust, resting his hand upon the figure's shoulder. Few have ever acquired the comprehension of this revered magus, the Order's forefather. An inscription was carved into the base stone. Samuel Liddell Mac Gregor Mathers, 1854 to 1918, Memento Mori. Jackson reminisced, after the Victorian era, plagued by charlatans, occultism became stagnant. Seeking truth begets a lonely existence. As with all summits, once they are overcome, solitude awaits. That may be enlightenment's most paradoxical facet, the burden of newfound perspectives. The Order's purpose was to alleviate this. Presumably hinting at Crowley, Jimmy leaned in nearer. Did you become closely acquainted with many of the old guard? Nostalgically, Jackson lingered at Mathers's bust, hoisting his glass in respect. You'll hear of Dion Fortune, Arthur Conan Doyle, Yeats and Bram Stoker, but beyond the known names, most of the greatest adepts are forgotten. As for Mathers, the paragon died right after our introduction. He glanced in our direction. We all need a hero, don't we? Van Gogh and plenty of others, surely. Although I've never met a real hero in person. Indeed, it appears I'm encountering one now. Jackson told us of his mentoring by another Golden Dawn founder, William Westcott. As a young intelligence recruit, he'd spend days alongside him at the Isis Urania temple, dissecting strategy and metaphysics, sipping scotch. During Westcott's final days, Jackson travelled 5,000 miles to attend his bedside in South Africa. His eyes held such great reverence, it was moving. I had never been exposed to such loyalty. Was the Order an institution of faith, Uncle? I know it was deemed occultic, but I've picked up on its Christian and Eastern religion associations, lots of crosses. Very much so. It descended from the Rosicrucian tradition employing Christian mysticism, ingrained with aspects of Hermeticism, Kabbalism and Gnosticism. Christ was revered devoutly, along with prophets such as Muhammad, Moses, and history's transformative Magus, Hermes Trismegistus. His influence reigned during the era of Atlantis. Hermes sure knew his Hermeticism, I presume, said Jimmy. The Order's most profound legacy is its occult renaissance. Defying known physics, trespassing the confines of religion, a framework was restored. Channeling in a series of systems led to the Order's development of astral projection, clairvoyance, telepathy, and other disciplines often dismissed by secularists. Stanley returned to the room with a bucket of ice, soda water, and another fifth of Bushmills. Asking for our specifications, he prepared a glass for each of us. Jackson took his triple neat. Facing the roaring fire, the warmth forced off my sweater. After toasting good health, sobered by his words, we settled into our chairs. By the sound of it, due to secrecy, the Order's legacy has been left to innuendo, I said. Seems a real shame. Jackson's dry reply teased irony. Indeed, yes, the Order falling by the wayside was immeasurably devastating. He leaned forward, eyes shining. Or was it purely misdirection from the world's most capable magicians? After all, wouldn't the legacy of mighty MacGregor Mathers be preserved? Walking to the fire, he poked at it ruminatively. Truth be told, even within my six, very few were privy to what ultimately unfolded. I knew it, said Jimmy. It never ended, did it? Can you tell us what happened? Did it move underground? Jackson traded glances with us. As for my secrets, the whiskey is certain to spill a few. Before continuing, you must both be sworn in. The Order embraced a term taken from the Sicilians' omerta, a vow of secrecy. I was doing my best to exude sincerity. Never had another's opinion meant so much to me. I'll attest for both of us, Uncle Jackson. Whatever you share will remain sacred. Omerta until the bitter end. I know we're artists, not soldiers, but I mean it when I say you can rely upon us. Jimmy lifted his glass, enthused. Sin to omerta. Care for another? Refilling our snifters, Jackson offered a toast. Here's to the pursuit of the unequivocal truth, no matter how miserable. We've arrived in an era where rationalism is shamed and people obsess over comfort. Today, few seek the lantern, too heavily indoctrinated by television propaganda. The lantern, like the sign of tarot, I said. My other mentor, A&E Waite, had the most well-known deck commissioned. He was another founder of the Order. Jimmy and I traded glances. Our quest to find the hermit had been decisively redeemed. We remained mid-toast, our glasses held up. As for the lantern, after the Second War, I spent time with Orwell, one of the wisest men I've ever met. He said it best. What becomes of truth when deception is projected into your home? I found intellect extends only as far as the courage that precedes it. Jimmy extended his glass. I see. A bloke's only as smart as his stones. Well said. Here's to the light of the lantern, gentlemen, no matter how black life dims. Clinking snifters, Jackson quoted Keats with eloquence. Beauty is truth, truth, beauty, that is all. Ye know on earth, and all ye need to know. Before drinking, Jimmy added a note. You sound like an American Delta bluesman, Colonel. They sing about good and bad, but the truth is most sacred. Here's to facing the music. Tipping back my glass, I finished it in one, without intending to. No less than the hawk feather on our path, my being near Jackson was a powerful call to action. Although my battlefield wasn't violent, there were parallels between us, some I'd yet to know. Beyond our distant relation, we both were born into a stifling degree of shame. You never finished the point you were forming earlier, sir, said Jimmy. Making occultic art, what's so troublesome about it? We don't mean to press the subject. The vibe was killed by his gauche mention. Appearing drained before answering, Jackson patiently consumed the remainder of his whiskey. Then he displayed the empty glass, looking contemplatively into it. This life's a test, gents, isn't it? Temptation can exist in all things. Jimmy finished his glass, refilling his and Jackson's. Most are inclined to take matters too far, meaning. I glared at him, impugning his cavalierness. Jackson wearied at the mention. He stood up again, his commanding frame approaching the fire before tossing a series of logs in. As each landed, the flames exploded, causing sparks to kick across the floor. His unvarnished tone bore a depth I've never forgotten. Such affairs carry grave, irreparable consequences, though many are victorious on earth, most lose it all in hell. Chapter 22. The Fourth Reich. Awakening the following morning, a clicking beckoned me to the window. For a time I'd forgotten where I was. As first light squeezed between the shutters, my eyes drifted to a wall-mounted photo of Jackson as a young soldier. Realizing myself in the chateau, I got out of bed, approached the curtain, and pulled back the fabric. I gasped when confronted by the scale of the creature on the sill. Beady, black eyes dug into me, those of a monstrous raven. 30 inches in length, its beak appeared gilded from age. "My lord, look at you. Have you come to tell me something?" It rapped again, as if asking to be invited in, as dawn's nascent iridescence refracted off its glossy plumage. Striking the black feathers, the color dispersed into a spectrum of rainbow. Blue and green parlayed into orange and indigo. Upon hearing my query, the behemoth unfurled its 5-foot wingspan. Puffing its throat, the corvid's irises flashed back at me before flitting into a skyward flurry. I glanced at my watch. It read 6:30. Returning to bed, I dozed off again. Dreaming the dream, the sequence played out in repetition. It happened just the same, waking at a rustling, realizing Jackson's picture, approaching the window, drawing back the curtain. Again I flinched upon encountering the raven. Gaping latently, its neck feathers flared menacingly. In the moment it was so real, less of a dream than a memory fragment. It appeared as a grainy cinema reel with distorted imagery. The raven pecked at the glass, veering off script. Picking up intensity, its golden beak began striking the surface with grim intention. It beat harder and harder until the glass exploded and the creature lunged inside after me, shape-shifting into a grotesque demon. The head remained a corvid, but the body transformed into a decrepit, black-feathered humanoid torso. With a jerky gait reaching violently for me, its fist-sized claws ripped through my flesh. I woke up, floundering in the bed, still detecting the acrid stench of its feathers, gagging from the pungent rot of a scavenger. The night before, whenever we'd finished a glass of whiskey, Jackson was quick to fill another. Amongst hardened men, addressing matters of consequence, keeping pace with the firewater bears its own valor. Pickled in alcohol-soaked graininess, despite the omerta vows, he'd imparted no occultic secrets. The vague depictions only hinted at his metaphysical tenure as a soldier. Jimmy had remained cognizant enough not to come off petty. Truth be told, I'd been on edge, worried that he would. God only knows the nightmares a soldier like Jackson endured. That morning, while exploring the grounds, the panoramic coastal views were staggering. We walked a worn path alongside Jackson, escorted by several hulking Presa Canarios. When a light materialized through the fog, St. Catherine's lighthouse was revealed in radiance. Jackson spoke of the namesake's legacy. St. Catherine of Alexandria from the 4th century. She defied the emperor's wrath, refusing to renounce Christ. When given to the breaking wheel, the torture device shattered without inflicting harm. In the end, she was beheaded. Written accounts told of milk flowing from her severed neck, not blood. As she reappeared through the fog, Jackson recited a prayer. "O glorious Saint Catherine, virgin and martyr, help me to imitate your love of purity. Give me strength and courage in fighting off the temptations of the world and evil desires." Hearing his words evoked great humility. After all, today was the feast of All Saints. "Strange as it sounds," Jackson said, free of provocation, "it was my 6th that exposed me to the order. I was delegated to a faction of the code-breaking division known as Room 41. I'm sure you read of the Zimmermann telegram in school. Well, history books bear the declassified iteration." That struck me as uncanny. "Am I following you? We all know Room 40. What's Room 41? Stayed in a grin, lingering at a vista, his gaze was just as steady. "That's what became of the order. It was absorbed into naval intelligence. The Golden Dawn didn't trivially fade away. The institution was commandeered by Major General J.F.C. Fuller. That implied conjuring spirits as a means of acquiring state secrets and occultic use of espionage. The notion spoke to the Golden Dawn's enigma, not to mention Jackson's vigilance. He'd dealt with demons layman esotericists couldn't fathom. Uncle, you're implying the order was affiliated with MI6 throughout the wars? They formed a division, this OB-41 that you've spoken of? Soldiers and the occult seem contrarian." Down the bluff, St. Catherine vanished into the fog as the onshore breeze dissipated. Jackson paused on the trail, taking time to explain to us. In espionage, any edge is warranted. During both world wars, the order was indispensable. The Third Reich was guided by its own mystical factions. I view the shadow government of today as analogous to the Fourth. The Fourth Reich? What are you suggesting? Was one side any better than the other? Why not ask John Kennedy or the tens of millions murdered by Stalin's regime? A narrative of propaganda was crafted for the public, but the globalist bankers are the solitary victors of war. Within. OB-41. This parasitic leviathan was referred to as the deep state. A shadow government of some persuasion? Who's in control? It governs unbound by elections, indifferent to jurisdictions and borders, serving the hidden interests of elite lineages. All of the misery and death of the world wars furthered their evil agenda. It's nothing but a trail of blood money I bitterly came to find. Modern warfare is deception. The lives of soldiers are expended in a modern-day Babylonian sacrifice. You're implying that prime ministers and presidents aren't of great consequence, said Jimmy. He began walking the trail. Let's continue. Descending near the shore, the story grew much darker, just as daylight pierced the cloud cover. In the midst of the First War's fallout, Himmler oversaw the vril society mediums that channeled beings in the ether. Then, in the early 30s, that protocol led to a sorcerer's recovery in the Black Forest. What kind of saucer, Colonel? Aliens? Jackson hesitated. I've found reality supersedes all strangeness, James. This summoning led to the reverse engineering of anti-gravity propulsion, as well as ethereal electricity harvesting known as zero-point energy. Fossil fuels are nothing more than a well-capitalized ruse. I grew increasingly disheveled. These were secrets from little green men? The Third Reich began developing their own sources after that, weaponizing them. Through the channeling of mediums, its believed interdimensional beings provided the necessary instructions to engineer them. They channeled living beings, Colonel. You're saying they communicated with creatures within the ships. I expected you'd speak of spirits, nothing like this. You see, James, throughout history there's been a commingling of the labels given to gods, extraterrestrials, angelic beings, and certainly demons. As for those Nazi protocols, the Allies instituted a parallel program. Oppenheimer's Manhattan Project was amongst the earliest examples. That's how they devised that, I said. Splitting the atom, the process was channeled. Jackson chuckled. I'm getting ahead of myself, aren't I? No, not at all. Keep on going, sir, Jimmy said. I'd fancy hearing every bit. Jackson squinted through sunlight. That would take ages. The Golden Dawn's knowledge extends into early Sumeria before the Great Flood, with records involving Atlantis that predate the Sphinx's construction. We both egged him on. Very well, gentlemen, said Jackson, veering us upward onto another trail. Let's warm ourselves with a glass of Stanley's chestnut schnapps. That level of chunter demands the hearth. As we ascended, the sea layer retracted, presenting a glorious, spotless sky. After kenneling the process, we returned to the drawing room where Jackson gestured to a wall-mounted flag. Upon it, a golden cipher wheel bore an all-seeing eye, nested within a pentagram. Above the emblem, OB-41 was boldly arched, while the phrase Enigma ex Umbra Scientiae was decreed below. This division represents the Golden Dawn within its formal capacity. He showed little reaction, voicing matter-of-factly. It was in the official building, shortened as OB, that the uncanny postulation was instituted. An esoteric application of the occult wasn't just feasible, it soon grew indispensable. In the 1930s, I was promoted to director. The division was composed of a cadre of spiritualists, diviners, and conjurers. Understand, these people were no charlatans. For the sake of discretion, they were referred to as OB-41 technicians. Magician technicians working as spies. Can you believe that, Jimmy? And by the second war, Uncle, you've mentioned they put you in charge. Fucking outlandish, he said, no less beguiled. The Zimmerman telegram's code would never have been deciphered without it. In 1917, pivotally, that intel led to the American War Declaration. OB-41 was formed to pass out the cryptographers from the occultists. He told of the wide-ranging applications. Anticipating and planning sieges, tracking enemy movements, even to coordinate high-value assassinations. The technicians were recruited from the West's most renowned metaphysical institutions. The Golden Dawn presented the very best. With each word, his clandestine past grew more daunting in my mind. Jackson Felkin was not a soldier who found the occult of any personal interest. To him, it was the call of duty, nothing more. The more privy we became, his assignment sounded as horrifying as any Gallipoli trench. So that's what exposed you to the Order, Colonel, King and Country. In understanding OB-41's mission, James, you must begin with a man named Eliphas Levi. He served as the Order's forefather from the grave. They conjured his spirit extensively in order to re-establish his systems. A powerful sorcerer, Levi, fair to say? Like Merlin or perhaps John Dee? Jackson laughed. Merlin, oh, the mighty wizard of Camelot. Despite all the foresight, he couldn't avoid being undone by a woman. I chuckled. Magic certainly have its limits then, particularly when cursed by a witch. The door opened. It was Stanley. He passed us each a toddy, leaving a warm ceramic pot to refill with. As I sipped, the resplendent essence of sweetened chestnuts warmed my chest. Much appreciated, old boy. I was just unraveling OB-41's origins. Care to join? Those were adventurous days, Colonel. It feels like another lifetime. Pardon me, gentlemen. I'll continue with preparations for supper. Cheerio, mate. Once he left, Jackson continued. Turkey's trenches paled in comparison to the anguish of my demonic dealings. We'd bait them, commanding them to facilitate the worst of curses. Nothing could have prepared me spiritually. I reported to Whitehall Court as a battle-scarred secular soldier and left 30 years later an unwavering Christian. Not for the dogma, understand. In my darkest hour I was touched by the Holy Spirit. But for that, I would have never found redemption. A powerful attestment, Uncle. How convincing to hear that from a man like yourself. There wasn't a peep from Jimmy. We both succumbed to his weighty association, pointing eyes at one another. What type of torment exceeds the agony of trench warfare? From down the hallway, a telephone rang. Each soul bears its own path. That's life's hardest lesson, I found. The Cathedral of Truth is an isolating place. Its pews are mostly empty, eh? How profound, sir, Jimmy said. Cheers for trusting us. We'll always hold Omerta, Colonel. His eyes turned once again at the OB-41 flag while swirling his snifter. The Order's secrets are all but forgotten in this Buck Rogers world. I sound like a coffin dodger, eh? You were about to go on about sorcery. Ah, yes, Eliphas. He quit the seminary the week of ordination after finding occultic church archives. He vanished for a time and his acclaimed writings followed. Notably, Histoire de la Magie ushered in the global adoption of tarot. Also, Levi first discerned the inverted pentagram with the Baphomet of Mendes. When I met Crowley, he claimed he was Levi's reincarnation. Stanley made his presence known. Excuse me, sir, may I? Jackson nodded. He approached, whispering. Jackson's countenance had grown affected as he stoically nodded, mouthing all right. Immediately after, Stanley excused himself again. Without consequence, Jackson continued on. You see, the act of commanding ethereal beings, even demons, isn't inherently sinful. Moral codes tend to drift, but good and evil can only be judged by the actor's pure intention. Jimmy poised himself in his chair. I get what you're implying, Colonel. For the most noble of purposes, only then are such affairs be deemed acceptable. For centuries, the Catholic Church openly employed its use. Further back, it was David's son invoking the Dukes of Hell in the Rites of Solomon. I've heard about that. How did Levi gain such proficiency? The story Jackson told was breathtaking. In the mid-1800s, a mysterious woman claiming Templar lineage anonymously approached him, offering a magical cabinet of custodial artifacts. It held an array of sacred and charmed instruments, including priceless relics and unfathomable grimoires. But the item that captivated Levi was a fragment of the Holy Lance. In dismay, he held the shard of Longinus's weapon. Consumed by humility, it's said that he wept for hours. The Holy Spirit came over him as he slashed stigmata into his wrists. Jimmy was intrigued. Blazes, that sounds heavy, Jackson went on. Whatever it was, scars from the Holy Lance or the contents of the cabinet, Levi rekindled much of the old-world magic. Identifying parallels, Jimmy said, Sounds familiar, do you think, Barry? That's much like Brunelleschi and Donatello's art renaissance. Across the room, a loud bang reverberated. I noticed Jackson flinching. From an upper shelf, a book had fallen. Standing, walking over in courtesy, I returned it to its place. The title was chilling. Histoire de la magie by Eliphas Levi Zahed. It was his again, wasn't it? Returning to my seat, I nodded. Jimmy eyed me while scanning the room. Chateau Felkin is haunted, Colonel. How quaint. I too explored the room's dim corners, my vision impeded by shadows. These are the tricks they play, Jackson said nonchalantly. He refilled our snifters and left it at that. Moments later, I jumped from my chair at another book falling. I wandered over and retrieved it. Once again, it was Levi's. Best to just leave it there or it'll continue to occur, Jackson said. Most likely that isn't Levi's spirit doing that, mind you. I'm still growing accustomed to these sorts of affairs, Uncle. I have experienced a couple of peculiar incidents, one in recent days. I imagine that meddling spirits must grow very cumbersome. The curse. Jackson let the word linger. For many years my existence was unmanageable due to the psychological toll of spectres' incessant intrusions. Jimmy drew closer. Is that why you advise against ethereal dealings, sir? All the horrible hauntings and consequences? For a moment, Jackson's eyes fell hollow. No, I'm not bothered by any common spectres. When a soul is exposed to the demonic, darkness festers. It's there one's perseverance is sure to falter. James, I don't doubt your eagerness. Frankly, it's something I've run into too often. He stood before the hearth as if forging his thoughts within the fire. The book had me unnerved, just as his candid words had validated Nomi's concerns. We're listening, Uncle. You're sounding the alarm, rightfully so. Excuse our foolishness, won't you? At the same time, I can't help being curious, Jimmy said. I tossed him a scorned look. That's fucking enough. Jackson returned to his chair, pouring the remainder of the schnapps into our snifters. Seeming deflated, the matter seemed to terribly strain him. Are there dire consequences for engaging in such sordid affairs? His rhetorical inflection gave no quarter. Hemmed in darkness, only then light emerges. Therein lies the predicament. Unlike in heaven, well-meaning intention won't spare us from suffering. Jimmy continued to press. We're not out to put ourselves in a harmful situation. Isn't there a method that's less consequential, a modest one reasonable for artists? That was the question that brought us here initially. We understand that risk is inherent. We're only after something reasonable. Come on, Paige, take it easy. To me, he came off flippant, if not a bit crazed. How goddamn petty. What's this stupid git going to say next? Tell Jackson he's his fucking magical hermit. He withdrew. Sorry, I don't mean to. At ease, men, Jackson said, chuckling unaffected. Curiosity in life is always warranted. To be sure, my years of service have left me overly reactive. Without specifics, he alluded to the challenges of occultic military applications. There were psychologically destructive aspects, corroding humility with contempt. It's time for a magic cigarillo, since you recruits have me doing the talking. Nothing fuels my chunter like a fine sativa. If this was Jackson's way of dissuading our interest, at least for me it served effective. Complex layers were embedded within the occult's allegory, each mystery only begetting the next. One becomes consumed, drawn into a labyrinth of indeterminable realities untethered from known truths. As Jackson described, no impregnable citadel exists in which to differentiate angels from demons or well-meaning souls from those of manipulation. By engaging, one flirts with an alluring madness. Perhaps the hermit's onus wasn't intended as occultic instruction. Maybe it was to spare us from hell. Jackson gazed out the window. The sun was setting against the English Channel. As the scene morphed, pink to crimson, the sky remained clear as a distant broom approached. The silhouettes of ships stretched towards the coast as glistening stars began to appear. First was the great square of Pegasus, then gleaming Saturn within Aquarius. To the east, the moon projected itself as a waning gibbous, camouflaging the surrounding stars. Once again, the telephone rang, but this time it was rejoined immediately. Jackson's head turned, attentive. Asking to be excused, he exited the room. Jimmy whispered, "Something must be fishy." They seem quite concerned. This is turning out to be more wild than expected. That doesn't forgive you coming off rude. Have some goddamn candor. Just look at his somber reaction. The occult triggers really harsh memories. I'm dead sorry, Barry. After all this time, I'm prone to being anxious. I just thought the opportunity was... The door opened. Jackson entered. Please help yourselves to the icebox and the drinks cabinet. We may be away for several hours. I can't be sure. Supper will have to be postponed. You might take another stab at the duck. If not, help yourselves to whatever's there. No worries, Uncle. Is all well? Stanley and I have been contacted by law enforcement. There's been an incident at the nearby village. Game for anything. I rose from my chair. Do you need us? Pausing, the instruction came hasty. No, we'll return as soon as feasible. And please, stay inside the chateau. Stanley will be freeing the presses to roam the grounds. Of course, Uncle. Aye, aye, sir. Opening a cabinet near the rear exit, Jackson grabbed a pistol before sheathing a sizable gutting knife. His movements were swift and robotic, evoking the soldier in him. He put his coat on, reaching for the door. I'll explain later, he said, nodding, dashing out. From the window we watched as they drove off in an old Land Rover, taking several of the griffins. Then came an onslaught of snarling and bellowing. The pressers had been released, chasing into the night. As the running lights faded from sight, the hounds began to bay beneath a numinous sky. We returned to the hearth, disjointed. Face drained, Jimmy looked at me. Must not be a fox. Chapter 23. The Beast 666. The grandfather clock struck 11 just prior to their return. As the headlights approached, the presser swarmed the estate's gate as we watched from a window. After the Rover squeaked to a halt, the engine stopped as the dogs circled. Stanley was outside in the kennel as Jackson entered the rear veranda door. He seemed even-tempered, a bit out of breath. The account he gave was troubling. The area suffered an inordinate amount of missing people, children in particular. Due to the surrounding tides, it was easy to conceal the most heinous of crimes. The threat, whatever it involved, had already gone. Between Stanley and those tracking dogs, we're sending a message. Whether strung up, shot, or driven into the depths, the corkheads have had enough. Much of what we heard in the taxi had been validated. Rather than pepper him with questions, we allowed Jackson time to sip his drink and settle in. After filling his glass, he asked that we accompany him outside. Led down a short trail, we arrived at an open-air gazebo where the unadulterated stars twinkled across the night-tide canvas. I'd never seen such an expressive vantage of the celestial. Jackson struck a match, lighting the reefer cigarillo, exhaling its fragrant perfume. Gazing upward, his countenance bore a tapestry of reflection. At night, I often find myself alone out here, wandering the heavens. His disposition softened. There he is, the belt of Orion. He released another plume, the smoke wreathing around him. Once it dissipated, I noticed Jackson's tearful eyes. Turning our way, he offered a profound admission. When I was a nipper, my mum poisoned herself fatally. Following my birth, she had grown melancholic and withdrawn. With an arm around me, sitting right here, she'd teach me the constellations. That's my favorite recollection. Don't worry, when I'm gone, we'll meet in the stars. That was her promise. His words bore through me as he passed the cigarillo, recalling the grandfather clock's memorial. I'm very sorry, Uncle. No matter how many years have passed, how devastating, I can't fathom the hardship. Enveloped by the blue-tinged light, Jackson forced a grin. We push on. He pointed low on the horizon. Our favorite was Ursa Major, the Great Bear. Do you see it? Right there, it extends around the Big Dipper. It relates to the nymph Callisto and her son Arcas. When I was much older, only then its implication became clear. Catching the starlight, his eyes glinted. That was her way of saying goodbye. What was her name? I recollected the grandfather clock's dedication, envisioning her loving presence. Smiling down upon us, she was there amongst the stars, waiting for her son. It was Ophelia. He grinned widely, encouraging the irony. My grandmother found it clever. Both were actresses at the Globe Theatre, revered for portraying their namesake. Softly I spoke over the ensuing silence. Life imitating art, but through the most tragic of circumstances. By marrying a war-addled narcissist, Mum's brief existence became a Shakespearean tragedy of its own. He dragged on the cigarillo, ruminating placidly while exhaling. There's a divinity that shapes our ends. That's what Hamlet said. I trust in God, but my faith involves the notion that life's worst tribulations are a means to redemption. I still cherish the belief that I'll be greeted by her in death. You said earlier that the veil's a test. Have you attempted contact? Jackson meditated, looking upward. Better said, perhaps it forges the crucible of our souls. Channeling her spirit was never successful. I tried countless times with the best mediums in the order. Only Alistair claimed to have sensed her, but it was fleeting. Jackson was our hermit, as the cards twice foretold. Unlike Hamlet or Robert Johnson, the demons didn't finish him. To be or not to be. Beyond that sentiment lies a much starker question for us all. Why am I forsaken? After Jimmy returned the cigarillo to Jackson, he wiped away the tears. After inhaling deeply, he managed to smile, passing it back to me. Elegant, isn't it? The devil's weed, or so they say. Right, yes, very tasty, I said, handing it off to Jimmy. Wow, the flavour really is unreal. Jimmy caused Jackson to laugh, saying, Yamon, there's cherries I'm tasting. Are you kidding me? It's delicious. Jackson seemed to have freed himself, appearing buoyant and meditative. It's a meaningful moment we're having. If not for palmistry, tarot cards, and a crystal eyeball, I wouldn't be smoking ganja spliffs with this exemplary man. No doubt the future with him guiding me along would offer immeasurable promise. A pleasure hosting you, gentlemen. I'll treasure all of this. Thank you dearly, Uncle. Such a memorable weekend. I'd say so, Colonel. Good God, this Jamaican ganja. I've never been so stoned. Inhaling a lungful, he burst out in laughter, the smoke jetting from his nose. In England during those years, even the worst of marijuana was seen as an extravagance. It was that rare. Us smoking a Jamaican cigarillo was like offering uncultured peasants the finest of caviar. The taste was complex, melding lush vanilla, tart cherry and allspice berries. Even a half-century later, its flavour remains ingrained. Fighting off coughs, Jackson took another hit, speaking while his lungs retained the smoke and responded with a Jamaican accent. Irie, Yamon. Grown by the Rastafarians out in Montego Bay. Blimey, I need a glass of water. Shit, I'm way too stoned. A shooting star streaked in our direction. Standing in awe, gazing upward, there wasn't a word between us. In a nearby tree, an owl hooted. Giving his best impression, Jimmy followed suit, hooing twice in return. On cue, it answered back thrice. Nature was speaking to us. Tomorrow I propose a hunt, said Jackson, pointing upward to a star cluster. Do you see Cain's Venatici, Orion's hunting dogs? It's an ancestral ritual that we enjoy, the preparation, managing, the griffins, and of course crack shooting. And afterward the reward, dinner together. He extinguished the cigarillo, smirking. If not for the glory, then for the laughs. That sounds like a real hoot, sir. Not to pry, Uncle, but what led to all the commotion earlier? You told the area's problems. Is everybody managing all right? His tone grew calculated. Last year, a woman vanished from her home just up the hill. We all knew her well. It's a small population this side of the aisle. The scene was disturbing. There was blood on the walls, but no corpse. It was a sword or machete by my estimation. What's more, the disappearances have been persistent. Far too many to dispel as runaways or done by intent. That sounds like pure evil. Very sorry about your neighbour, Jimmy said. Thank you, James. I rarely consult the Aether anymore, but I did so in this case. It's a killer that I failed to identify. It would be heaven sent if he dare intrude the chateau. With sleight of hand, Jackson had produced a 7-inch knife. No shit, you'd be ready, sir. It was a modest example of magic in the hands of a soldier. Any idea who's responsible, Uncle? Were clues found for the investigators? Scotland Yard takes their samples and moves on. The locals suspect something demonic, but I'm not so sure. If bodies are tossed into the channel, they're immediately swept out to sea. Jumping a ferry is fast and easy, not to mention anonymous. He spoke in an anguished tone. I only pray it isn't a soldier. Gaze into the abyss, it gets a taste for you. They don't teach that in commando training. A meteorite shower began taking place above. Spectacular, isn't it? A series of bright lines streaked over us from a single point of origin. Come along, gentlemen, we have a grand day ahead. Let's share a nightcap at the hearth. Following Jackson, I'd grown so legless from the ganja, I was walking on the moon. Returning to the drawing room, he cracked open a litre of Bushmills, offering ice and soda, splashing our snifters. Tending the fire, he pumped the bellows, the pressure ripping up the flue. Hoping to subdue the effects of the sativa, I downed my Bushmills in two. I'd mocked that vile driver's mention, but the grimy bugger hadn't exaggerated. Whether a ripper or a hellhound, God forbid, evil was on the prowl. An odd sort for your generation, you two, fair to say, with this esoteric interest. How familiar are you? Long ago I came across Crowley's books and was intrigued by all the innuendo. Also, I'd always fancied magicians. I used to fool the neighbourhood lads with card tricks. Not crawl-lay, it's crow-lay, like the black abomination of a bird Leviticus warned of. The bloke was not simply another magician, mind you. He was an alchemist with a penchant for lacing drinks. We were all advised to keep our arses covered in his company, particularly as naval ensigns. I coughed up some whiskey. What the bleeding hell? Jackson raised an eye. The devil himself may have said that upon Alistair's arrival. Jimmy winced. Waking up butt sore after being diddled by the beast 666. Talk about a nightmare of a curse. My God, just imagine the shame. I would have shot the bloody sod. Right, and bloody missed, I said. For most in the order, his conduct was intolerable. Practicing magicians, sure, but these were family men predominantly. Spin a yarn then, won't you? Begged Jimmy. He assumed a curious look before nodding. Very well. While raving high on mescaline, Crowley dyed his pubic hair blood red while sacrificing a goat. Then he dashed full Monty through the ceremonial hall. Bear in mind, this transpired during the Order's Beltane feast. Everyone witnessed it. The tales I've heard weren't nearly this outrageous, said Jimmy. Jackson hesitated as if unsure, then continued. Things came to a head when Alistair was speaking in tongues with his bare ass facing us while squatting atop the altar. Then explosively he defecated on all those sitting near. Imagine, he wore the dead goat's horns, waving an erection. Be it unrepentant or diabolical, we fell into hysterics. A detestable scene. Jimmy is sure getting his Crowley fix, and how preposterously obscene. Quite the showman, Alistair, fortunately for all of us. He died shortly before Hollywood would have come calling to immortalize him. What a nightmare that would have been. Dare to fathom, films by Universal Pictures produced by the Beast 666. Move over, Alfred Hitchcock. Jimmy was biting his laughter. How did he manage the bloody crotch? Wait, did he shag the goat after sacrificing it? Say it's not so. No, really, you've got to be kidding. Jackson replied inconsequentially. That was Alistair's modus operandi, the combined use of lewd sex and substances as ritualistic stimuli. But of course that's common practice since the dawn of human history, predating the earliest civilizations. He'd manipulate participants under the guise of anthropology, recreating ancient ceremonies. I took it in with disbelief. Was he serious as a magician? I mean, come on. It was all very real, therefore Crowley was tolerated, though few approved of his Thelema religion. Like most spiritual leaders, his abuse of power was deplorable. He'd sodomize his devotees while looting their pocketbooks. Oh yes, as for conjuring, he was OB-41's most capable. He was involved with that too. None other than Alistair Crowley served as a goddamn MI6 agent. Jimmy reacted with highly intrigue. You're insinuating the bloke was a spy? Insinuating? Upon my transfer, it was Alistair who initiated me. Then 10 years later, he was under my command. As I said, his systems forged many OB-41 protocols. Through the window, miles out at sea, lightning touched its surface like descending fingers. Approaching from the south, a storm was soon to reach the Isle. Jackson poured me a healthy cup. There's a bit too much bog-trotter in us. Should you ever wonder why you're more kooky than others, that explains it. Believe me, Uncle, I'm aware. When I neglect shaving a few days, my face turns burgundy. A red beard, then, he said hilariously, alluding to his tale of Crowley's misdeeds. It took a moment before I caught on. I laughed and laughed, finally catching my breath to clarify. Yes, red, naturally. No need to stick my face in a slaughtered goat's fanny. On the nearby wall, Jimmy was obsessing over photographs. He did a double-take at one in particular. Waving me over, he pointed to a group of men posed before a marble altar. Some were in Royal Naval full-dress uniforms, while others adorned black ceremonial robes. There was a bald man with piercingly sinister eyes. There he is, the Beast 666. Sure has the look for it, eh? It read, Alpha et Omega, OB-41 Adepts, 1921. Nestled among a row of earnest faces, Jackson loomed next to Crowley in the center. He looked over. You'll find a few of me with that bawdy croaker. Everyone would argue about who'd stand next to him during photos. His ethereal proclivities were only outmatched by the rancid stench of his orifices. Mostly armpit and arsehole with an ever-present foundation of Penhaligon's cologne. And there was nothing worse than his devil's breath. It stunk like a maggot-infested skip. As I inspected closely, a chill enveloped me. God, just look at the menacing bastard. It must have been creepy being so close to him, Uncle. He shrugged otherwise. Like most wartime soldiers, some measure of depravity is an asset. Much like myself, Crowley had a willingness to do things others refused. In later years, would you believe, it was I whom Alistair was leery of. More than the others, he recognized the extent of my malady. What's with people calling him the Beast 666? As a boy, his mother deemed him so, can you imagine? Rather prophetic considering his legacy. The newspapers famously reported him to be the wickedest man in the world. That behooved him, of course. His ethics were questionable, but his actions weren't necessarily criminal. In war's figurative trenches, ringed by OB-41's darkest hours, he was just another vulnerable soul. The door opened. It was Stanley. "There's an update, Colonel. A constable called. They've made the rounds. There's nothing more to go on. It seems the perpetrator passed through Rookley Green from Godchill." Jackson nodded impassively. "People around here can't seem to remember a car's make, let alone license plates. Thank you, old boy. Keep an ear out for the telephone tonight, won't you? My instincts tell me there's a hiding place somewhere. I doubt the sod made it very far." Once Stanley left, Jackson joined us before the pictures. As I said, only Alistair claimed himself capable of contacting my mother. I tried many others. In proving so, she told him of my favourite nursery tale, Jack and the Beanstalk. I still have the magic beans she gave me as a boy. My body quaked from a chill. Was it really her then? Jackson directed us to a photograph of Ophelia. She was holding a garland of flowers while acting in her fated role on stage. The frame read Act 4, Scene 5, Hamlet, 1903. It only happened once. In the end, Alistair was clear he wasn't sure. He did his best, I'm sure. "Not to pry, Colonel, but have you planted them?" "The beans?" He smiled beyond the endearment. "I don't know why, James, but I've never considered it." He shook his head, mind affected. "Very well indeed. Tomorrow's the day." "Nice one, sir. That's how Jack stole the magic goose that laid those golden eggs." The grandfather clock struck once, inspiring us with silent reflection. Jackson set down his glass. "Tomorrow we'll rise at dawn and get those gun dogs in action. As for today, such a joy it's been, you've endured enough of my doldrums." He paused. "If only my family's sins could be absolved, like wisps up the flume, invariably they return." While oblique, I took his words to be a soldier's reflection. Breaking a prolonged silence, I owned up to my deficiencies with firearms. "I'll warn you that I've never been hunting, Uncle. Other than cork rifles at carnivals, I've yet to hold a gun." "Is that so? How times have changed. Perhaps falling asleep tonight, visualize yourself in the thatches while sighting the weapon. In Hermeticism, that's a well-practiced form of magic, influencing dreams to affect the future. I'll make a point of it. Dreaming the dream, so to speak." Giving validation, Jackson winked at me. "Dreaming the dream that dreams the dream. Yes, that's right. Remember, the magician doesn't foresee the future. It must be manifested." Placing a hand upon his heart, he recited an ode. "Every night and every morn some to misery are born. Every morn and every night some are born to sweet delight. Some are born to endless night. Cheerio, gentlemen." Then, twirling his right arm, he lowered himself into a curtain-call bow. After he'd left, I swilled down my whiskey, blissfully weary. "Ready for bed soon? You heard the good Colonel. Time to navigate our destinies while dreaming of bird-bagging." Trying to contain himself, Jimmy grew enlivened and emphatic. "Did you hear that? The hermit just spoke to us like apprentices. Next thing you know will be Golden Dawn recruitments. Talk about a family connection. Nomi and Hester's tarot readings have been absolutely smashing." Standing up, he slammed his glass down elatedly. "Good night, Gov. The ganja alone has been mind-blowing, wouldn't you say? He's one righteous man, Jackson. There can't be another like him. Cor blimey, look at us. I'd say we're halfway to Wonderland." I forced myself to my feet, too trolleyed to think. Fair enough, I suppose so. Perhaps I'll dream of bagging a muse tonight. "See, Barry, that's the way. You're on it." From the ashtray, he retrieved a half-smoked Jamaican cigarillo. "Let's have a little more magic before hitting the sack. Boy, it sure is tasty, the Jamaican. Who needs hashish with this?" I took a couple pulls before coughing repeatedly, regretting it instantly, having underestimated its potency. A woozy sensation intruded as I stumbled off kilter. "Fuck, now I'll be completely ransacked, won't I?" He continued puffing on it in persistence until its potent effect made his eyes swollen. "Just one last drag. Come on, it's too good not to." To shut him up, I followed suit. Between that and the Bushmills we should expect some squiffy dreams. He paused, pinching the butt, dragging yet another, finishing it entirely. What a legend, your uncle. I'll see you on the other side, Gov. And hey, watch out for those black dogs under the bed. Before leaving, he stood at attention, saluting. OB-41, Adept Page, retiring for the night. At ease, Commando. Go on ahead. I'll tidy up and blow the wicks out. Loitering behind, I snuffed the candles, collecting the snifters, tossing out the empty bottles. While closing the door, a boom reverberated in the darkness. Though spooked, I re-entered, knowing what to expect, reaching for the lamp. As the light popped on, 2 books lay on the floor before me. I picked up the nearest, emboldened by Jackson's courage. In my hand, I expected the tome by Levi, but it was Milton's Paradise Lost. Thinking of Hester and the face in the mirror, I slid the book back where it was. Doing so, the hairs rose on the back of my neck. A shiny object was behind it. Pulling it out, I held a large, blood-stained dagger. Inspecting its ivory handle, at the base, an inscription read, 1919, Adept Initiate, Inner Order, Golden Dawn. The blood. Is it due to hunting or warfare, or perhaps something far darker? Returning the knife to its hiding place, I placed Milton's book before it. Then, leaning down to inspect the second cover, its title read, Moonchild. As soon as I knew what it was, I left it be and hurriedly exited the room. Shutting the door, I swallowed the terror down with a sprinting pulse. The tome had been penned by the Beast 666, the Haruspex of Thelema, Alistair Crowley. Near the top of the stairs, I paused to listen. Peeking through the banisters, all was deathly quiet. Nothing was there. In the bathroom, while brushing my teeth, a banging erupted from the first floor. Rather than return to discern its cause, I dashed down the hall to my room, pulling the covers over my head. My uncle was everything a paragon, no less courageous than Van Gogh, my hero. How would I have fared, thrown into his parentless, war-torn existence? What if my soul was hollowed out from all the collateral misery that I'd inflicted upon the innocent? Like Vincent, my artistic pursuits were deliberately chosen, whereas the soldier's duty is commissioned. As a lad, Jackson suffered terribly, persevering far more than I. That's why he has no family, he shoulders shame. Who would even fathom the rot of his self-disdain? For the first time in memory, I invoked a prayer. Dear God, it's me, Barrington. I've never spoken to you like this before, and I'm not really sure how, but I have something important to ask. No matter what he's done, please, save Jackson a seat in heaven. If he wasn't born a soldier, he'd have done nothing wrong. And thank you for blessing my life as an artist. I know I tend to take a lot for granted. Just know that I promise to make you proud. Closing my eyes, my mind stimulated by the cigarillo, colours flickered vividly as the cinema leader focused. Far within the willows, voices rasped amongst the snarls of hounds. I slipped into the nightmare of the infernal manor, frozen at the sound of a wet, lung-tearing bellow. The water mirrored the inferno in obsidian ripples as I accepted the outcome as inescapable. From the flame's crimson depths, a pair of searing irises charged in my direction.